Welcome back to the HPP podcast. I'm Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. We dove into college hoops last week with our first draft stock report of the season. The show also featured two great guests, Ohio State big man Zed Key and Bruce Pascoe, who covers the Arizona Wildcats for the Arizona Daily Star. You can listen to that episode or any other HPP episode at hoopsprospects.com. Please check it out. We are shorthanded again today. Drew is back, but Mav Swenson has gone into hiding following Texas A&M's dismal showing at the Myrtle Beach Invitational. The Aggies opened the tourney. They came in 24th ranked team in the country, opened the tourney with two straight losses by a combined score of 154 to 191 to Murray State and Colorado. Wasn't good. Texas A&M looked a mess. They did win, though, their final game in the tournament yesterday against Loyola Chicago. So today, Drew and I will be discussing the biggest news in college hoops, talking about the prospects whose stock is rising and falling, and we will also be joined by Notre Dame wing Dane Goodwin and Eugene Repay, who covers the Villanova Wildcats for VUHoops.com. Drew, welcome back. How are you doing? Did you make the Stanford basketball team as a walk-on?
Unfortunately, I did not. I had a great showing. I actually got hurt at the tryouts. It wasn't really anything on my part. You can't go wrong with the 3-and-D guy. That's what I bring to the table. Unfortunately, I got hurt. I wasn't able to get it done, but it's all right. It's okay. They'll be fine. There weren't a lot of minutes to go around, anyways. It looks like so.
Well, I don't know if you saw them play against Wisconsin, but it looked like there should be plenty of minutes to go around.
No, unfortunately, the only game that I've actually gotten to watch is most of the when they played San Diego State. And
how'd they fare there?
Not great. They did end up making it a bit of a game. I mean, San Diego State is one of the better defensive teams, and it definitely showed. I was just disappointed. And yes, I think they closed the gap. At one point, they were looking at, I think, close to a 20-point deficit. I think they got it down to like 11-8 range. But I just was a bit disappointed because both Darion Trammell and Matt Bradley, the two guards who are the two best players on San Diego State, especially offensively, didn't play great, didn't shoot great combined. And so I thought maybe Stanford had a bit of a chance, but that San Diego State defense is no joke. And I mean, if you're not able to manufacture high efficiency shots and run an effective offense, they're going to make your life miserable. And Stanford doesn't really have that one kind of go-to bucket getter. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll right the ship. I think Harrison Ingram will be better. I would like to see Max Renaud out of 7 foot out of France, maybe get a little bit more burn. I mean, he had a monster first game. Granted, I don't remember who they played. It wasn't a great team, but he had 22 and 9. So maybe get him some more minutes. But here's hoping they could be a little bit better. I was hoping they'd make a little bit more noise, given that the Pac-12 looks to be a little bit down this year. We'll get into it later, but I wasn't overly impressed with UCLA, who I believe is the top team ranked in the conference. So
yes,
I believe that they are, but we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Right.
There's some bright spots, but there's definitely work to be done.
Matt Bradley, I believe you know him, and I know Hugh knows him.
Yeah, so Matt Bradley and I actually have a weird connection to the both of them. I don't know them personally very well.
You know Trammell too?
So my dad actually trained Darion. Darion went to my rival high school. This was years ago. And was a great high school player. I mean, he had an awesome journey. He played at San Francisco City College, which is it's the premier community college program in Northern California. They compete for state championships pretty regularly. Then he went to the University of Seattle, had a great career there. Now he's with San Diego State, which is awesome to see. So my dad has a relationship with Darion. Like I said, trained him as he was younger during his community college and high school years. And then Matt Bradley, kind of a similar relationship. My dad knows of people who've trained Matt Bradley. So it's more of a they've run into each other. My dad's worked them out in the same gym before, but they're great dudes, great guys. NBA fit, maybe not so much, but as college players, they're great scorers. They're a little bit undersized, but I think San Diego State's one of those teams that I really like because they defend. and as Matt Bradley in particular, his offense has really been off. The guy shot 40% from three last year on a pretty high volume. At some point, he's going to pick it up.
Yeah, he's wired to score. He's one of those guys.
Exactly. At some point, he's going to have that 25-point explosion where he gets out of his slump. And with him and Darion, that's enough offense between those two. If they defend at a high level and they basically force teams, I like to call it like a race to 60 with those two. If those two can give you, if you can get 40 from those two and figure out the rest of your offense, they'll be a tough team to beat. Yeah. I think they're at 17 right now. I think they'll be in that 20 to 15 range all year long. Maybe a little bit better if the offense really gets going.
Yeah, and Hugh, our good old buddy, was playing basketball against Matt this summer at some pro-ams. With or against?
I think a bit of both, because I know they were both down that San Diego area. So I think Hugh said that they would get paired up sometimes against each other other times. So
right. So before we continue into college basketball, let's talk just a little bit about the NBA. You weren't here last week, so Warriors are still under 500. Are you? And they've sent Wiseman down to the G League. You said a couple of weeks ago you weren't too concerned. Are you any more concerned?
I'm definitely a little unsettled. I wouldn't say I'm overly concerned. There's a lot going on with this team. I mean, first and foremost, we haven't even talked about, championship hangover is a real thing. There's the reality of this is a team that's getting older. They just won a championship where they were heavily doubted, and now they're probably trying to just get that energy back. The defense worries me. Because defense, especially in the NBA, is primarily an effort thing because everyone's a great athlete and everybody, everybody's able to compete
you're
physically.
Absolutely right.
And so the defense worries me. The three main talking points, I know Clay has been a point of contention for a lot of people. The bright spot is he just had 41 last night and hit 10 threes. Yes, it was against Houston, but it was the Warriors' first road win of the year. And for a player like Clay, given just the type of player he is, plus the injuries, and I'm sure the mental battle he goes through probably daily, having to trust in his, in his lower body and his lower extremities. I think that was a great sign. He's shooting still 37.7% from three before a 10 for 13 showing. So the 3-point shooting is still pretty effective. That's a very solid, 38% is nothing to sneeze at. So I think Clay will be all right. Poole kind of up and down. I know there was a crazy stat that said when he starts, he's averaging north of 20 points. When he's coming off the bench, he's down to it's like this massive disparity. Unfortunately for Poole, I think the bench is where he's best suited, not because he's not a starting caliber player, but because the Warriors' second unit he's a bucket getter. He can get his own shot. And there's really no one in that second unit who can really do that consistently. I know DiVincenzo's been a little bit banged up. He's another guy that can probably, get his own bucket here or there. But you kind of need Poole in that second unit because if you swap him and Clay, which is what people are asking for, Clay has never been generate his own shot, generate his own offense kind of guy. He's always been able to thrive on the attention Curry gets, Draymond's ability to find him and get him open. If you swap them, maybe Poole gives you 20 plus a night and he's great. But Clay would, I think, really struggle, at least for a while, and the Warriors don't have time to try to mess around with that because he's not his own. He's not his own shot creator, and after those injuries, he's really not. So I think Clay starting Poole off the bench makes the most sense. But the thing that's bothered me the most, and I've been to some Warriors games in person this year, I'm really getting tired of Kuminga and Wiseman. Their body language, their effort, really bothers me. And it's starting to become an issue where it's like, you've done nothing. Like, yes, you were on the team, but let's not get it mistaken. Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, Draymond Green, they basically won the championship. You were more or less along for the ride, and that's fine. You're in your second year, third year coming off injury. But, man, I need to see something. I need to see a passion. There's no reason Kuminga should not be the best defender on this team. And yet he's getting 13 minutes a game. His PER, which I know is kind of a skewed stat towards rebounding, is at 6. He's averaging, when he does play, 2 rebounds a game. This is physically, there's no reason he's not a perimeter. He's not able to defend a la Andrew Wiggins just with effort, energy, crash the glass. So I'm very, very concerned with his effort. And kind of same thing with Wiseman. How he has not taken over Looney's spot as a starting center concerns me. And I love Looney. I think Looney is quite possibly the most underrated big man in the NBA. Not claiming him to be some superstar, but I mean, does everything you need. He's giving you 6 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, which is kind of, that's a new element to his game where his passing is starting to raise up. How is Wiseman, the number 2 pick in the draft, physical freak, in averaging 4 rebounds a game and 7 points? And I'm just very concerned. I think I'm getting to the point where I'm not saying you abandon ship, but if there's a trade package that comes in to capitalize on the run that Steph Curry's having, and you can go secure another kind of star player, and it would cost you maybe like a Wiseman and Kuminga, I might consider pulling the trigger. I like Moody. I think Moody plays hard, and I think Poole is still room to grow. So you still have some young pieces, but I'm slowly but surely losing some faith in those two.
Yeah. I haven't really seen much of Wiseman, over the past 6 months, but right. I definitely noticed in Summer League, and we talked about it over the summer, that Kuminga seems so disinterested in being there.
I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing of it is neither of them have landed the big money yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Their second contract is, so I don't know. But then again, Zion got huge money and basically based on like 1 or 3/4 of a good season or something like that. So,
but we saw it. Like we did at least see. We saw what could happen.
Right.
I'm looking at Wiseman and Kuminga, and I was at the
we
Kings
haven't
game.
seen them do that.
Yeah,
right.
When the Warriors scored like 80 plus in the first half. I mean, it was the best first half in Warriors basketball history. And then Kerr had pulled the starters, and then this was a couple weeks ago, but had pulled the starters, inserted the second unit with all the young guys, Wiseman, Kuminga, and the Kings almost won the game. And the Warriors were up 20-something plus. And it wasn't just because, Wiseman turns the ball over, head down, jogs back. Kuminga just seems disinterested, and when he gets the ball, he's like, well, I don't know if he's trying too hard or he's not trying enough. I'm just worried because the Warriors, the expectation was the young guys were going to be the second unit, and you're going to have this super deep lineup of 5 veterans starting, and then Jordan Poole and Moody and Kuminga and Wiseman with DiVincenzo. And, man, they're going to have they're balancing 2 timelines. It doesn't look like that's going to work. It doesn't look like that's going to work. So, we'll see. I think the Warriors are fine. Steph's having an MVP season. I think Clay's going to balance out, and I think Poole is going to continue to get better. But I'm worried about those two.
Right. So I know we've talked about the Nets probably too much, but just a point of interest that, Ben Simmons finally had a really good game the other night against the Grizzlies. 22 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists on 84% shooting, which is pretty amazing based on how he had been doing. And he plays in Philadelphia tomorrow. What do you think? Ben, have a good game or a bad game?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that he has a decent game because of more along the lines
That's not out the limb. That's right in the middle.
Well, fine. I'll say he has a good game only because Philly's going to be so undermanned. It looks like Philly's going to be without Harden, Maxey, and Embiid now. And so I think this is a game the Nets might blow them out just by, the fact that Philly's missing their top 3 players. And I think Ben will have a good game just because there's not really going to be anybody to stop him. The only person to stop Ben in their next game is going to be Ben Simmons. There's no reason he doesn't.
The fans. That's
what I'm saying. Like
the fans are going to try all night from the second he steps on the court till they can't see him anymore. They're going to try to get in his head.
And see, that's what when I say decent game, I'm thinking maybe along the lines of like 14 points, 8 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists. He's probably going to be north of 50% from the floor because all he shoots is layups and dunks. So like, I don't think he's going to go out there and have a 35-point triple-double, but I do think he's going to give you the Ben Simmons special of 14, 8, and 5, decent efficiency. They're going to, if they win the game, it's going to be because Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant and Kyrie is back and Kyrie gives them a 20-point because there's nobody to stop them because they're missing so much firepower. So I don't want to say he's going to have a monster game, but I think just by the fact that the competition won't be at a super high level, I think Simmons will just kind of fall into a decent game.
Well, I'm going to say he doesn't. I'm going to say they get in his head and he has a miserable night. But if he doesn't, what does that say? That says that Ben has always been able to do whatever he could do, and he just chooses,
Narratively, it's going to look bad either way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Either way, one, they got in his head, or two, he's
a punk.
Right. Yeah. He just plays whenever he feels like it. Right.
Right.
So, all right. Last thing on the NBA. Matt put this in the script. I don't know really what to say here that I haven't said before. Jazz are 12-6. And he puts in here, what should the end game goal be for the Jazz? Well, I said, I don't know when it was. I don't know if it was when you were on the show or not, but I said, ride this out. Keep Conley. Let Conley bring Sexton along and keep Clarkson. The only thing I said is maybe you get rid of Beasley because him and let Ochai Agbaji play. But I say, ride it out. You got the pieces and and you have a lot of draft picks, so maybe you can finagle your way up into number one anyway, even if you are the 9th or 10th or 8th seed or well, hell, they might even be higher. I mean, the way they're going.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we're what, a third of the way through the season, about give or take, or a fourth, whatever the breakdown is, or a fourth of the way through the season, a third, whatever it is. And I mean, it doesn't look like it's a fluke at this point. My only fear is, this team, if they get to, it looks like they're going to. So let's say they make the playoffs and they make the playoffs, not the play, and they get into an official spot and they're going to have a 7-game series. I just worry that the lack of a true star could come back to bite them. But I mean, you do look at the team, Colin Sexton is young, Lauri Markkanen is young. Clarkson's he's not young, but he's not aging. Beasley's not aging. They're going to still have a couple good seasons of basketball to give. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only piece on that roster.
Same with Olynyk.
Yeah, same with Olynyk. You've got Ochai in the wings, waiting. They also have
Kessler.
Say Kessler. I say I have to agree and maybe kind of switch my stance here and just go, this team is young. They have a lot of. They're not big name, but people forget Markkanen was a top pick. I don't remember where Sexton went in the draft, but he was a first.
I think Sexton was 6th overall.
Yeah, he was a high lottery pick.
They were all top 10.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about Olynyk. Olynyk may have been 12th or something like that.
No, Olynyk was at the end of the lottery. I remember that. I think he was in that 12 to 16 range.
Right.
But still, that's still a lottery pick.
Markkanen and Sexton were definitely top 10 picks.
Top 10 picks, and Ochai was number what, 10?
No,
11?
I don't think so. I think he was 14.
14. Okay, I mean, he's a lottery pick too.
Right.
And so it's that's a pretty good young core. They don't have the star power, but maybe all you need is one of those guys to take that next step. It looks like Markkanen might be the guy to take that all-star leap. Sexton's always been a 20-point per game caliber scorer. And like you said, maybe you finagle your way into maybe not a top 5 pick, but that 6 to 14 range. You get another solid lottery player. And I mean,
he and Conley have formed the bond.
Yeah.
And Conley's on the last year of his deal. I say, you bring, you ride that out. You let him be like a coach on the court. Yeah. And maybe even bring him back next year on a 2-year deal for I don't know, 5,
some
10
small
million.
money.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree, because
let him ride out. Let him ride into the sunset on a good Utah team.
Yeah. I mean, you're not, because trading Conley, you're not going to get anything for him. You're not going to get any value.
No, you might get a second round. You might get a second round pick.
Exactly. You're not getting any needle moving value for him that would make you even better. So keep him.
Yeah.
I would keep him. And, I do agree that Clarkson and Beasley are a little bit redundant, and Clarkson's been there longer. He won that 6th man of the year. He seems to love it there, which is a hard thing to do for that team in particular, to get star players to buy into the city as a whole. So I do agree. Maybe look to move Beasley. Maybe see if you can get some more draft compensation for him just to continue to build the coffers there. But at this point, I see no reason to break it up. with the Warriors struggling, the Lakers struggling, the Clippers being up and down with Kawhi, you don't know what he's going to do. I think the Mavs are one of those teams that are teetering because I'm still hesitant to buy big stock in them because they're so Luka dependent that they are the one team in the league that one injury, they'll go from playoff team for, second round kind of playoff team to arguably the worst team in basketball, perhaps even. Right. Maybe not the worst, but pretty bad. Yeah. So I'm not really willing to buy stock in the Mavs just yet. I think keep doing what you're doing. Do they win the West? Probably not. Do they finish as the first seed? Probably not. But is this a team that could surprise people and have a 5th or 6th spot locked up? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. All righty. So moving on to college basketball, let's talk about some of the things that we've seen in week 2 of action. But I want to start with the flop rule. And if for those of you not aware, they have instituted a new rule that's slowly turning into a complete disaster. And that rule is if the referees think you are flopping, they automatically call a Class B technical on you, which means 1 shot and the ball, I believe. Yeah. And what you're seeing is, as they try to make their point, is you're seeing a lot of players or offensive players are making contact, and literally guys are getting off, maybe the guys are exaggerating what happened, but they're still being contacted. All right. So I give you a little arm, and maybe you take, instead of maybe just going back 6 inches, maybe you go back a foot in a step, But the worst one I saw was it was on a shooter in the corner. It was a Kawhi-like play. Who was the big dude that undercut
Zaza Pachulia?
It was one of those. The guy was totally the shooter was, I think it was Armaan Franklin of Virginia. He was totally undercut. He fell back into out of bounds, and they called him for flopping.
See, I didn't watch was that the Virginia-Illinois game?
That was that was the Virginia Baylor game.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I remember what you're talking about. I didn't watch the Virginia-Illinois game.
Yeah, that was the first round of action. So what I'm saying is you're seeing a lot of things that would normally be called offensive fouls. They're totally ignoring the offensive contact, or either way, they're totally ignoring the person who actually initiates the contact, because maybe the person overdoes it a little. And sometimes, in the case of Armaan Franklin, he had no choice. He had to fall down or break his ankles on because the guy was totally underneath him. It's insane rule, and the thing about college refs is there's a lot of college games out there. And I know they try to bring in the best refs for the best games, but
it's hard.
This is not the NBA. The NBA guys are out there every night. They're being reviewed every night, and blah, blah, blah. Those guys are professionals. The college refs, some of them are professionals and some of them not so much.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know if they can rescind this rule, but I actually think somebody's going to actually get hurt.
It wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I understand why you do. I mean, flopping is one of the more annoying, and it can mess with the flow of a game by putting people, especially in college, you only have the 5 fouls. So I understand they're trying to really be on top of it, but you do have to also be aware of player safety and not. I mean, I don't remember the play, but I mean, if you're undercutting somebody, we saw what that did to Kawhi Leonard. Right. I mean, that could put a guy out for a season this early,
and it ruined the playoff season for the Clippers
exactly. And in college, the teams are even less deep usually. So I mean, you undercut. I'll use my team for example, just because you undercut Julian Strother and he gets a high ankle sprain. He's out 6 to 8 weeks and can't play. The Zags go from a Final Four hopeful to a team that would probably struggle to get out of the round of 32 if you were to miss extended time. And like you say, for any team, you take any team, you take away one of their top 3-4 guys in college, depth just isn't as common, and it has much more of an impact. So,
indeed, and here's the thing. When you see guys flopping in the pros like Joel Embiid, and then he lays on the floor for a half hour, screaming at the ref. Who does that hurt but him?
Exactly.
You just ignore him.
Right.
The player who flops puts himself out of action. He puts himself out of the play. Just let him lay there on the floor, and then if he cries about it, give him a technical. That's the way it should be handled. What are you saying here? That you're not that you want to stop the faking because you're such a bad referee that you can't really tell the difference when someone's faking and when they're not? You know what I'm saying? I agree. I don't like flopping either, but I think people who flop actually take themselves out of the play. And the only thing it is if you buy it. And so don't buy it. Ignore it.
Yeah, no, it boils down to how team and I, and also, there is an element of look, refs are human. They're going to make bad calls. We see it in every sport. And sometimes it's also just part of the game. There is a level of gamesmanship.
Yeah.
And if you go back and, a player that we've talked highly of here on the show, but Jalen Williams from Arkansas led the country in charges. I guarantee you go back and watch every single one of the charges that were called for him. There were probably a few in there where he really sold it. Where he flew back 2 feet.
10%. I bet you 10% are
exactly. And there's a level of gamesmanship to it. So I think you have to understand that you'll never fully get rid of flopping. If it's super egregious, then as a ref, you should be catching that anyways. And if a guy's really able to sell it or it's really tacky, that just falls into that category of it's part of the game. On to the next one.
Yeah, my point is it seems to be there's so much looking for the flopping that they're forgetting about the contact that actually initiated the flop. And a lot of times I've seen it where, well, hell, that was enough contact to move that guy. Okay, maybe he exaggerated a little, but he was still fouled. But you call the foul on the guy who actually was fouled.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's bizarre. All right, let's move on. All right, so there were 5 big games yesterday. We'll talk about 4 of them, and we'll talk about a couple other items here in our college notebook. And we'll start off with the big game last night, Gonzaga, Kentucky. My thoughts were I was, one of these 2 teams was going to lose twice in a week. Obviously the good teams, but because Gonzaga earlier in the week had got thumped by Texas. By the way, Mav and I both predicted Texas would win the game, though we didn't see that thumping coming. And then Kentucky losing to Michigan State, which we both picked Kentucky. That was a close game. Kentucky could have won it. Shigwe came back and played very well, but it wasn't enough. Michigan State, we'll talk about them a little later. What were your thoughts? My thoughts were that Kentucky, for whatever reason, didn't seem to take Gonzaga seriously in the first half, and then it was too late.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Everyone on the show knows I'm a Zags fan, so it was great to see them win and win pretty convincingly. They led wire to wire, and this had the makings of a 20-point blowout at times. I think it was 16 when it was all said and done. It
got close as 5 points in the second half, but that didn't last long.
Yeah, I think 16 was the final, the final margin of victory. And there's obviously late game free throws and stuff. So we'll call it a double-digit win for the Zags. First I'll start with my team. I continue to love Drew Timme more and more every time. The guy is just a gamer. It doesn't matter who he plays. You're getting 20 and 8 from him. His passing is super underrated. His best pass of the night came on a layup that was missed, actually, where he was backing down, had the ball a little bit kind of in the short corner, a little bit higher up, and threw not a no look, but an over the shoulder to a cutting Hunter Salas, who actually missed the layup. But thankfully Anton Watson was there to put it back. Timme continues to be a National Player of the Year guy. Another 36 minutes, another 20-point game. Julian Strother played one of the best games I've seen him play as a Zag as a whole. The 5 turnovers weren't great, but one of his selling points, and has been for me, is he's a great rebounder. And I think, and we'll get to it, but I think the most deadly line of this team might be able to roll out at some point is going to be Strother actually playing the 4 at some point. But he had a 20-point, 14 rebound.
He did against Michigan State.
He did, yeah. And I think if they commit to that at some point, and I know it's hard because you really like Anton Watson and what he does,
right?
But I think
he has an element of defense and toughness.
Yeah. Watson to me played Shibwe the best I've seen someone play in a while. I know Shibwe got his points. Oscar is an absolute load. The guy's going to get 20 and 10 every time he steps on a court unless he gets hurt. It doesn't matter who he plays against.
Right.
But Watson's hand quickness, toughness. He had a 10-point, 10-rebound double-double. He was 5 for 8 from the field. He had 2 steals, 2 assists, a block, only 1 turnover, only 2 fouls, guarding Oscar Shibwe down low. Just really impressed. And then Rasir Bolton, I think, needs to take on even more ball handling. He's not a playmaker. He literally had 1 rebound, no assist. That was it. But he's just a steadying presence.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a Nemhard. He's not a Suggs, but he can shoot. He's a great shooter. He was 50% on 8 attempts, 24 points, and he just makes the right plays, makes the right reads. Right. Still need more from Hickman and Salas. I just need more from those two. I mean, they're 5-star guards with pedigree. This is their second year in the system. And for everything that they do that I'm like, that was great, there's a bad turnover. Or they're late to getting the ball where it needs to go. I mean, one thing that Nick Hickman kills me with is he's very late getting Timmy the ball in the post, or he just doesn't. He'll have the mismatch, or he'll just have positioning, and he just kind of either he hesitates, or he doesn't see it or recognize it, and it's like, that's 2 points. You have to get the ball where it needs to go. But I think the Zags showed up. They played with a sense of urgency that I'm glad that, they did after that Texas game. Granted, Texas would have beat anybody in the country. At one point, Texas was 71% from 3. They would have smoked anybody. The Zags just happened to be the victim that night. But no, I think this team's going to get better. I'm really, really out on Efton Reed right now as my final note. He looks, awful. He can't catch the ball, doesn't have a post move that he can use offensively. He's not protecting the rim. He's not rebounding. He fouls at an incredibly high rate. I think Ben Gregg should get more minutes over him. If you're going to look for that third rotational big, I don't think Gregg's elite, but he's been there for 2-3 years now.
Yeah.
And I think
top 100 recruit.
Yeah.
You also have a guy who's injured, and I can't remember his name right now, but he's also a big. It would be an option. Caden Perry.
Yeah. He was a 4-star.
Yeah, so
4-star forward.
So you have that. Hopefully, we'll have that option coming up. So I'll just run over my quick thoughts on Kentucky. Yeah. I think I've seen every Kentucky game, or at least parts of it so far this year. The thing I noticed, I said when Mav and I were picking the Michigan State game, I said, this team has 2 of everything, and the only thing that can stop them is Calipari.
Yeah, that's fair at this point.
But I will say this, for whatever reason, CJ Frederick and Antonio Reeves, they were the 2 guys, 2 transfers, one from 2 years ago, one for this year. But Frederick didn't get to play last year because of injury. They were going to add the element that always seems to be missing from Kentucky, and that's outside shooting. And I know Frederick can shoot, okay? I saw him light it up at Iowa for 3 years, okay? The guy could shoot. I even saw him shoot when he was hurt. I didn't see much of Reeves, obviously, because he played at Illinois State, but he's not nearly as a classic type of shooter as Frederick. Guy's very athletic, though. I mean, I can't believe that he ended up at Illinois State, because he really does have a quick first step, has a lot of dribble moves, can create his own shot. But he's still a good, solid 3-point shooter. And you know what? Every time they play a good team, those 2 guys disappear. Yesterday, Frederick, 1 of 6, Reeves, 2 of 7. So the same problems that Kentucky always has, they still have, even though they have the shooters. And I don't know who to blame that on. Another note about Kentucky is that the latest victim of Calipari on the recruiting, mess that exists, or the what do we want to call it? The
log jam. It's just
the
a
log jam. Yeah, the Calipari log jam is Chris Livingston. Livingston, 5-star. He got 8 minutes yesterday. And then last year's 5-star, who hardly played, Damian Collins, who was a guest on our show earlier this season, 4 minutes. 4 minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I also, another note, Shigwe, as good as he was, I thought, he really underestimated Timmy. I thought Timmy, he wasn't prepared to play somebody that mobile.
I think my biggest issue with Kentucky, and I've seen them play, I watched a good chunk of the Michigan State game, which they could have won, so they weren't embarrassed. I think part of it was they came in and just didn't take the Zags seriously after the Texas game. But I just watched their team, and I just was really unimpressed. They don't run anything. There's no real offense. It's Sheway putbacks, and as great as Oscar is, the reason I take Timmy over him is because Timmy has basketball moves and skill sets. Now, Oscar's a great free throw shooter. He was 6 for 6, which is something Timmy can work on. But so much of his game is predicated just on athleticism and strength, which is great. But when you need to, you can't dump it down to him. He's not going to go get you buckets the way Timmy can. In my opinion,
he doesn't have the footwork, but you don't want to underestimate him as an athlete.
Right.
Either. I mean,
I know he's a force, but when teams adjust to that and are willing to, can kind of combat that, a la Anton Watson, who wasn't afraid, went toughness for toughness. He had 20 and 15, and they lost by 16. It was like a quiet 20 and 15, which is it's hard to say. He had some great putbacks where he exploded through the contact, finished it, but
they were 6 of 25 from 3-point land. That's why they lost. I mean, plus they didn't play good defense.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, outside of Jacob Toppin, there didn't seem to be a lot of offense that wasn't shoot a three or Sheboy just gets an offensive putback.
That's fair. And I think Casey Wallace gives you that element
I'm a big fan of his
3-level scoring.
Yeah, he was there. You could argue he was their steadiest player. He was 5 for 9, 2 for 3 from 3.
He up until Shigwe got into the rotation. He was their best player.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to take anything away from their top players. I just was very unimpressed. It just seemed like a roll the ball out because we've got a bunch of 5-star recruits kind of system.
Right.
Where it was a bunch of threes and Sheboy do what you do and we're going to win. Because if we shoot, 35% from 3 and Sheboy gives us 20 and 15, we're going to win. It just didn't seem like great basketball. It seemed like a bunch of individual parts who are really talented, trying to do what they do best. And yes, part of it is they shot horribly for sure, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just not really sold on Kentucky, and I know they've dropped in the rankings. And all that.
You know what this team lacks?
What's that?
A coach.
Yeah, I just think they could get more out of it. They could run better sets, get more creative, find ways to get Fredericks and Reeves open. Give Wallace some more 3-level scoring opportunities. Maybe I just don't know. I just feel like the team is so reliant on shoot threes, at least from the games that I've seen. If we make them, great. If we don't, Sheboy gobble up the boards and go for a putback.
Right.
And Toppin did have some great in-between moments. I will give him that. He had some great pull-ups, attack the defense, mid-range game, which I like to see. And I think Kentucky's going to win their fair share of games just on the sheer number of 4- or 5-star talent they can throw at you. But I just wasn't sold at the level of defensive intensity and any sort of offensive creativity other than we've got talent. Hopefully talent is more talent than you have. That's just what I saw.
Right. Calipari, I'm telling you, if he screws it up with his team, he's going to have to. I think he's going to have to do some answering. You
got Sheboy, brought in 2 shooters. You got 2 5-star guards, 2 5-star forwards that don't play.
You have Toppin. You have 2 5-stars. Actually, you got more than you have. Lance Ware's a 4-star. Ugana Unyenso, who's we talked about him on the show last week. He's another 4 or 5-star guy. This team is loaded. They have 2 Severe Wheeler, who's led the SEC in assists for 2 years in a row. Yeah. I mean, this team is loaded. It should anything less than the Final Four should be a complete disappointment.
Yeah. I mean, they were the 4 seed. They were the 4th best team in the country, which tells you this team should have Final Four aspirations.
Right.
So I agree. I've just never been a big Kentucky guy because I do think so much of it is roll the ball out, and that's what it looked like last night. And that kind of bothers me because say what you want about the Zags toughness, but they came to play and executed. I didn't see any kind of execution from Kentucky. I just kept saying, screw it, keep shooting, because eventually they'll go in, and they never did. So,
So there was a excellent tournament and a 4-team tournament in Vegas this weekend called the Continental Tire Main Event. It featured 4 top 20 teams: Illinois, Virginia, UCLA, and Baylor. And Virginia opened up against Baylor and won a close game against them, which was a little bit of a surprise. Both Maverick and I thought Baylor would win that game. And then again, the second game, we both liked UCLA to beat Illinois, and Illinois was actually trailing by 18, but then they brought out pressure defense, and UCLA collapsed and ended up losing that game. Terrence Shannon went crazy in that game. But then in the championship game between Virginia and Illinois, which was yesterday, it was a typical Virginia type game, 70-61. They ended up prevailing. I've seen this Virginia. This is the third time I've seen this Virginia team. They really share the ball well. I believe they're playing with a little more tempo in previous years. But what really is spurring this team on is the emergence of Reese Beekman and Armaan Franklin. Franklin was the star of the game against Baylor. Beekman was the star yesterday. This Virginia team looks like they could be another player who's emerging for them is their big center, Caden Shedrick, who's a shot blocker, rebounder, but also, he can hit out to 12 or 15 feet and maybe even expand that down the road. So, and this team has, there's no real superstars on this team, but it has good depth. There's a number of talented freshmen. They're not even really playing much. Virginia is for real. And I think they're going to challenge for the ACC title.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen. I wasn't able to watch that Illinois-Virginia game, and I haven't seen either team play it this year. But it doesn't surprise me. Rich, we talked about it when we were doing our top 25 teams, our preview, and we were like, Virginia's Virginia. Do we think they're going to win the title? Probably not. But is this a team you want to see at any given point, especially if you have to play on a neutral or at their place kind of court? Probably not as well. So, it doesn't really surprise me. I've always been a big Bennett fan. With the coaching jobs he does. I'm still suffering from a little bit of PTSD from when I picked them to win it all and they lost in the first round all those years back. But it's you get what you get with Virginia, and I think their ceiling's capped because they don't have like that true college star to kind of carry them when the going gets tough. But if you got to try to get to 65, 70 points on them to have a chance, and if they hold you under 60, odds are they're going to beat you. Like I said, especially if you're playing on a neutral court or away. So I'm glad Virginia basketball is kind of back on the up and up.
Yeah. As far as Illinois goes, Shannon was Terrence Shannon Jr. was on our stock rising last week, and he proved that, definitely against UCLA, having a huge game. Didn't have a great game yesterday, but still, the explosives of this is there. He's turning into a 3-level scorer who could go right and left. Yep. His outside shot was always suspect, but that seems to be turning around. Also, Matthew Meyer and RJ Melendez, who were pretty quiet the first few games for Illinois, they kind of started to come alive over the weekend. Coleman Hawkins is giving them steady production as a stretch 5. And then they have like three or four freshmen that are highly regarded. Probably the most regarded is Sky Clark, but they all have had their moments. Sincere Harris is a tenacious defender. Jaden Epps is, I don't know. He reminds me of a type of a Baylor guard that, like maybe a little smaller Davian Mitchell. That kind of guy. So, there's a lot of talent on Illinois, and they definitely could challenge for the Big Ten title. So
definitely.
Moving on in the runner, the game to avoid going 0-2 for the weekend featured 2 top 10 teams, which was UCLA and Baylor. Both of these teams, to me, there's a reason why they were playing each other to try to avoid 2 losses. What are your thoughts on these 2 teams?
Yeah, I'll start with Baylor since they won. I watched this game, and first and foremost, LJ Cryer and Flagler, the 2 guards for Baylor, basically, they were dominant. They basically those 2 are the reason that Baylor won, because the rest of the team was okay. But, those guys combined to shoot 8 for 16 from 3. Both were over 50% from the field as a whole. Didn't turn the ball over too much. They both were great. I was really impressed with both of them. This is the first time I've seen Baylor play and to play a top 10 opponent. They looked really good. The rest of the team left kind of a lot to be desired. Keontae George is someone I watched a lot in high school. This was my first time seeing him collegiately and was pretty disappointed. He seemed to really force his shot. I mean, he was 0 for 6 from 3, 2 for 10 from the field, 4 turnovers, only 3 assists. I was kind of surprised at how ineffective he looked. I mean, again, he really was forcing the ball. But they did get solid bench production. I'm not too familiar with them, but it's Adem Bona and there was someone else who gave them a decent game off the bench.
Caleb Lohner?
Yes. Lohner. They both had, I think, 10 off the bench. So, I mean, Baylor looked okay. I wasn't overly impressed. I was even less impressed with UCLA entirely. I mean, first and foremost, I know Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell are back. Campbell was pretty ineffective offensively, which doesn't surprise me. I think he's one of the best pure point guards in the country, but with the team kind of shifting more to him needing more of an offensive role, I'm a little bit concerned because 5'10", 5'11" point guard, I'm worried about his ability to be that second or third scoring option consistently. I saw Jalen Clark. He looked really good. He was kind of like the lone bright spot for them. He was 10 for 14 from the field. He had a 23-point, 10 rebound, double-double. I think he looked really, really sharp, and he's going to kind of be the key for them because I think the one player that we had talked about earlier being the X factor was Amari Bailey, and he looked like pretty awful to me. I was pretty unimpressed. I didn't really see anything that stood out to me compared to when he was in high school. And then, out of curiosity, I pulled him up for the year. And Baylor and Illinois, he has combined for 6 points across those two games against top-tier opponents. Now, I know it's his fourth and fifth collegiate game. He's playing 2 top 25 teams, a top 10 team. I understand that that's a pretty hard test, but you got to give me more than 40% across 2 games. He didn't make a single field goal in 30 minutes against Illinois, 6 total points. I mean, if you're a top-tier 5-star freshman, this team's going to need you. And, he was pretty ineffective in these past 2 games. He looked good. He looked solid against, Sac State and Norfolk, but that's not the type of competition UCLA is going to be looking to play. They're looking to make a Final Four type run if you're, where they're at. So I was kind of unimpressed with both teams. They weren't necessarily sloppy. The turnovers weren't super bad. I think UCLA only had 8, and I think Baylor had like maybe 10 or 12. So the game wasn't super sloppy. Just that it seemed like a lot of the game was really relying on like Jalen Clark for UCLA and Flagler and Cryer for Baylor. Like everybody else outside of those 3 guys just looked kind of off to me.
Yeah. My observations with UCLA, I think it's pretty clear that Bailey has the handle and the explosiveness and the athleticism to play at this level. Now, he was my pick, my last-minute change pick. I had picked Brandon Miller of Alabama to be the most productive freshman this season, and I made a last-minute change to Bailey, which isn't looking like a great decision on my part. But I'm not ready to give up on him.
Yeah, he'll be better. He'll definitely be better.
As you said, the competition will get easier. But they do need him. If they're going to be a top 10 team, they definitely need him to be putting up 10, 15 a night, dishing out some assists and so forth and so on. So,
yeah, I think UCLA would be best suited if Jalen Clark is playing great as a whole. This is probably his best game to me of the season because of the level of competition. But he's averaging almost 17 and 8, and he's shooting like something like 65% from the field. He's playing really, really well, which is great to see. Jaime Jaquez will have better days. His limited athleticism kind of makes him hard to trust to have those consistently big games just because he's not a great athlete. But, he plays super hard. They would be best suited if Clark, Jaquez, and Bailey took on the scoring load and let Campbell, maybe instead of shooting 15 times, maybe shoot more in line with like 6 to 8 shots a game with their high efficiency looks. He's running the point. He's getting others involved. He had 6 assists to 2 turnovers. So he's playing well the point guard role, but he can't take the most field goals on your team.
No, I agree.
It's just not going to work.
And last year was the only year he was ever a reliable 3-point shooter.
Exactly.
So we
Banking on him
thought,
to shoot 40%.
we thought he turned the corner, but really that was his first really good season shooting last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's at 33%. And again, small sample size. It's only been 5 games, but 41% is going to be tough to replicate for him.
Right. And the other guy, and we'll talk a little bit about him later in the show, but is Adem Bona, the highly touted center.
Yeah.
We'll talk about him more later, but he definitely is not living up to expectations. The thing, and switching over back to Baylor, Kenyatte George had a really good game against Virginia, so I'm not worried about him there. And Flagler, Cryer, and George are all in our top 100 on our draft board. The thing that worries me about Baylor is the latest on Jonathan Chachua, Everyday John, is he's not going to play this year. Now, so that leaves them with Flo Thamba, who's okay at center, but he's not really that productive. And then they have Jalen Bridges and Caleb Lohner as their forwards, and then they have another freshman who I don't even know. I think it's Joshua Joanna. He's a freshman out of the NBA Academy in Africa. But basically, what I'm worried about is their forward, their front court. Their size. I thought Jalen Bridges, coming from West Virginia, he's a former top 100 recruit. I thought he was really going to take off with Baylor, and right now he's not playing well. Lohner, is a limited player, and all the other guys are limited players. So really, what I'm seeing in this team is you have Cryer, Flagler, and George, and then boom, that's the end of it.
Yeah.
So and that's why I wasn't super high on Baylor this year, is because I just didn't know how much they really had other than those 3 guys.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, those guards are going to have to carry the load. I've seen Keontae play in high school. This was my first time seeing him in college, so it was a little jarring to see him look so just kind of out of sorts. But I mean, I'm looking at his box scores from some of his previous games, and I'm like, he's going to be fine. He's going to get the shots. He's going to get the opportunities, and he'll have better days because defenses aren't going to be able to key in on him because they have Flagler, they have Cryer. So it's just going to be very interesting to see how far those guards can get them.
Right. So the last big game from yesterday we're going to talk about is Oregon in Houston. Houston went out to Oregon. I actually thought Houston was going to blow Oregon out of the water, and they won, but they didn't win going away. Though it looked like it was going to turn into a blowout. And
the second half was a battle, though.
Yeah. And so there were a lot of turnovers by both teams. Houston had a lot of guys in foul trouble. Their prize freshman, Jarice Walker, he had 4 fouls. Sasser sat most of the first half because he got 2 quick fouls. Somebody else was in foul trouble. Mark got in foul trouble. And Sasser didn't have a great game. But the player who really impressed me in this game, a guy we talked about before in our college preview, was Terrence Arsenal. The guy is just athletic, 3-level scorer. When he came into the game in the first half, it just totally changed the complexion of the game. That's when they basically, Houston went from it was like probably within a 2-point window, and Houston's kind of pulled away then, and they really never looked back. It got close, but they never really looked back. So Arsenault is a guy who I'm really impressed with. On the Oregon side, Mav and I talked about this last week. Most of their talent is at the center position, and they're starting, Nafali Dante and Nate Biddle together, and that's and then their prize freshman is Kalel Ware, who played 20 minutes and only took 1 shot yesterday,
and he missed.
Yeah, and he missed. And so this team, and also to make matters worse, Keyshawn Bartholomew, who was a transfer from Colorado, he got hurt in the first half and never returned. And that left this team just doesn't really have much at the wings in the guard position. And they got three centers, so they have Bartholomew, they have Richardson, and three centers. And that's what Oregon is. And so that's why I was surprised that they actually kept it that close. But the reason why they did was N'Faly Dante played excellent. He
was the best player in the game.
Yeah. He's finally healthy. He grabbed 11 boards yesterday, blocked 3 shots, scored 16 points. He's also making steady. He's still a pretty bad foul shooter, and he's not
4 for 4 though. From what that's what I was
about to say. If you look at his career foul shooting, it's improved every year.
Yeah.
So, and this is a former 5-star guy. So, and the only reason why people haven't heard of him is because he's been hurt so much.
Yeah.
But he definitely was impressive. I mean, he has an NBA body. He looks like Kofi Coburn, but in shape.
But in shape, who can actually run the court.
Yeah. So, by the way, I saw Kofi at an Illinois game where they were celebrating the Big Ten title last year.
Yeah.
And he's playing in Japan now. By the way, the NBA barely gave him a look. He had a belly.
Surprising. Yeah, it's not surprising. He just, that doesn't surprise me.
The guy's 22 years old, and he's trying to be a professional basketball player. He had a gut on him. Come on, Kofi.
I mean, that will work over in Japan.
Oh yeah,
he's bigger and stronger than everybody.
Sure. Yeah, he's going to be like Godzilla, But so Kofi scored 30 and grabbed 20 boards tonight. But you're never going to play in the NBA with a belly. Trust me.
Doesn't have the game for it.
Any thoughts on this Oregon-Houston game?
Foul trouble definitely kind of limited Houston. I think they had to be a little less aggressive. I mean, it's funny. We're talking about a close game in a game where they held Oregon under 40% from the field. It was close, but under 40% of the field and under 15% from three. So, I mean, the defense was still great. I saw, again, Terrence Arsenault is another guy that I watched a lot in high school. I did not see him. This might have been his junior year. So this is about 3 years ago now, but he was not as polished offensively as he looked last night, which is great to see because I think athletically he has the makings to be their most versatile player. Sasser's their best guy, but Arsenault has the makings to be their best defender, probably their second best scorer. I really like this kid.
Yeah,
I think he's a legit 6'7", maybe 6'5", 6'7" range. In there,
I think he's 6'7".
Yeah, I think 6'7". I know that he's listed as 6'5" in some places, but I've seen him play in high school. I'm like, no, this kid looks 6'7". But, I mean, I think he's legit, so I'm really glad to see him play. My only concern with Houston, and this is kind of always the concern, is are they going to be able to get enough offense to consistently keep the games low scoring? Like, are they going to be able to survive the inevitable 1 or 2 games a year where a team is just able to score on them? Because 66 points, you look, it's like nobody was really – I mean, Arsenault was their best offensive player yesterday. I mean, Sasser will be better.
He was their best player yesterday.
Yeah, he was their best player. And Sasser will be better. I mean, he was 3 for 9 from 3. Sasser's going to have a game where he shoots 12 of them and makes 7, and I mean, he has a 20-point game. So Houston's going to be fine for the long haul. I'm just worried that they are still susceptible from watching last night to just that one game where the offense could let them down. And they can play their asses off defensively, but the offense isn't going to be there. That's what I'm worried about.
They also don't have the height to match up with guys like Dante.
Exactly. So I'm just worried that there's going to come a game where they play a team that's going to be able to kind of punish them inside and get easy offense despite their best efforts. And if their offense dries up, Sasser has a bad game or whatever it is, I just don't know if they're going to be able to keep up. Now, over the course of a 30-game season, more often than not, the defense is going to win out. But the timing could just be they get to the Sweet 16 and they match up against a team that's really hot, just playing great ball or has a big presence down low, and they're just not able to to stymie them. Oregon, again, N'Faly Dante really impressed me, and he has been pretty much all season as someone who's in the Pac-12. I follow them, and I mean they haven't really played anybody, but I mean, he had a 20.9 rebound game against Irvine earlier this year.
Who's a respectable team year in, year out.
Yeah, respectable. Like, he looked really, really good. And he had another double-double to start the season. I forget who they played, but he looked really sharp there too. He had like 16 and 10. I just have been really impressed too with he's not fouling at a super high rate. Yes. Which is great. Like,
in a game where a lot of fouls were called. And by the way, his teammate Will Richardson's really stinking up the place.
Yeah.
We had him on stock falling, and I don't know what he finished with, but I know before the first half was over, he already had 5 turnovers.
Yeah. So I just think Dante is that he's definitely their best player, and I think will continue to surprise people. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the wrap of the season he's averaging a solid 15 or 16 points and 10 rebounds.
I would also not be surprised if he's in the second round drafting range.
Yeah, because like I said, he has the body. He looks like an NBA athlete. The free throw percentage still isn't great.
Yeah, he's got to get that. He's got to get that up. Around 60, at least 60%.
Yeah, you know? and he's kind of close. I mean, after this 100% from the line, he's probably right around maybe 60 because he was at like 52, I think, going into this game. It was low, but he looked really good. Oregon just doesn't have enough firepower anywhere else to really, really be a threat.
I'm not sure why people ranked him in the top 25 because we didn't have him in ours. And all right. So now Mav and I talked about this a little bit, but this continues. And Florida State 0-4 now, and they'll talk about. If you watch a Florida State game, the announcers will talk about injuries and so forth and so on. But, a lot of the guys that are hurt, the only real thing at this point that's holding this team back, the only significant player is their top incoming freshman. Mm-hmm. And if you're telling me that Baba Miller is that good, that would make so much a difference in a Leonard Hamilton system. I mean, I love Leonard Hamilton. I love his system. He's one of the coaches I respect the most that's out there. Yeah. But please, let's stop making excuses for this team. The reason why they're losing is the players are not performing. We're talking 4 and 5 star guys that are just not coming through. Matthew Cleveland, he's a great driver, very athletic. He'll make some excellent finishes into the paint. He hasn't made a 3 all year. Okay.
0% from 3, folks.
Right. Caleb Williams shooting 43% from the floor, 25% from 3. Cameron Fletcher, 4-star guy, 37% from the floor, 26% from 3. Jalen Warley, 4-star guy, 38% from the floor, 0 threes this year. And by the way, they are banged up enough in the front court, and we talked about this, that I actually said they were going to redshirt, and they still could. Deontay Green.
There's still time.
But they didn't redshirt Deontay Green. But he's playing with a knee brace that looks like something that you could encase a mummy in. I mean, the thing is huge. I think they will ultimately redshirt him. But he did play a little bit this weekend. But come on now. The only player that's playing decent is a UCF transfer, Darian Green. Yeah. And he's a good little shooter, always has been. I don't think he's, NBA material, but he's really shooting the lights up. But he's the only one that's doing anything for this team. So, and I don't think if Baba Miller is playing, okay, maybe they'd win 1 or 2 of those games, but at best they'd be 2-2. So
yeah, no, this team, and I mean, Rich, you covered it. The offense looks horrible. I mean, nobody's been effective consistently. I think the thing that bothers me the most is this team's playmaking is awful. They are averaging 11 assists a game as a team to 14 and a half turnovers. If you're averaging that few assists and that many turnovers, you're just not gonna win. Period.
They don't have a true point guard.
They don't have a point guard. So it doesn't matter how much talent you have if you can't get the ball to where it needs to go and get guys the shots that they need in their spots, it won't matter. I mean, I'm looking at this and they've got Warley is the only guy that's averaging over
and Warley
3
is the
assists a
guy.
game.
And Warley is the guy that they were hoping, a
Yeah.
former 4-star guy who had a rough
Yep.
year last year as a freshman, and they were hoping he would, turn into something. And
he's averaging 3.8 assists, so we'll call it 4. But he's also actually 2.5 turnovers.
Right.
So it's like it's
he's
not
he's
horrible,
no offensive threat whatsoever.
Yeah, 5 points a game, I think, is what he was at. And he's under 40% from the field.
It's 0 threes.
Yeah. So I just this team doesn't have the right pieces. I don't see this ship getting righted really at all. I mean, you play in the ACC. I mean, looking at their schedule, they're going to get upcoming. They've got back-to-back games with Purdue and Virginia at the end of the month going into December. I think they lose both of those. And then once they start ACC play, you've got to see Duke, probably not beating them. You're probably not beating Virginia. I think Notre Dame is better than them. I think Miami has the potential to get right. There's a lot of talent on that team. I think they'll be better. Their guard play for sure has the potential to be better. You got to play North Carolina. I mean, I don't see it this year.
It's going to be a long year unless Baba Miller turns out to be ultra special. And even then, you need Cleveland, Warley. You need some of these guys to start hitting shots. And
it's just not going to happen this year, in my opinion. They'll win some games. They're not going to go over for the whole year, but this team just doesn't look great. This team will not be able to compete with those top dogs.
A lot of things are going to have to change. Yeah. So another team that's kind of been just the opposite, who has actually surprised us, is Michigan State. Now, Michigan State does have a loss on their resume, but they've beaten Kentucky and they've beaten Nova. They lost on the ship, which was, I don't know how much you can really, with
the aircraft carrier.
Any game where the announcers first announce the speed and direction of the wind.
Yeah, I felt so bad.
Has to have an extra
free throws. Watching him shoot free throws with the glare coming through the backboard. Right. Like, it was on my screen. I'm watching this game. And I can see the glare, and I'm watching. I think it might have been Hauser or somebody literally looking to take free throws, and the sun is coming through the backboard. I'm like, oh my god, dude, no way.
The wind was 10 to 15 miles per hour, and
I think
not many people could hit a shot.
Yeah,
but let's go over what's going on with Michigan State, because this team is deep. Again, another team without a star, but they got a lot of good players.
Oh yeah, I love this team.
Joey Hauser is catching fire and is now shooting. Joey Hauser is Sam Hauser's younger brother, was a highly touted recruit, had a great freshman year at Marquette, and has never really seemed to click with Michigan State. But now, you know what? Now it seems to be coming together, shooting 50% from 3 on almost 6 attempts per game. Malik Hall, who's just recently moved into our top 200 on our draft board. He's a great all-around player. Shooting 56% from the field, contributing 5 rebounds a game. Very good defender, tough defender. AJ Hoggard, great playmaker, great rim attacker. He's still not shooting great. Okay, but he really started to light it up against Villanova. He had a really good game shooting from the outside. And that's the thing that's been missing with Hoggard. And a guy's name who I butchered unmercifully last week is Matty Sissoko. I called him Cisco. It's Sissoko. And we talked about Matty at length last week. The guy is tough as nails, shot blocker, rebounder. Haven't seen a lot of shooting from him yet, but very athletic, big. And then we have Jaden Atkins, a little lefty who, oh man, this kid can he dribble? And he is starting to come on after being out with injury. Now, his shooting percentages aren't great either, but you can see the potential dripping off of him. So Michigan State is going to be a team to watch all year. So definitely high on them.
Yeah, they're loaded. This team is deep. I mean, it's a Tom Izzo coach team, so they've got the high-level coaching. And it seems like we go through this song and dance more or less every year with Michigan State, where it's like, they're right on the cusp. I think in the preseason, I think we had them at like 32 or like in the 30s. I think they were overall like 35 on a lot of sites. So nobody was saying they were a bad team, but I mean, if they play that Gonzaga game at a neutral site, just indoors, they might win. There's a good chance they win that game. Now, I think the Zags would have been better because both teams were dealing with the outside conditions, so maybe not. But this team could very realistically be 4-0 with wins over Kentucky, Villanova, and Gonzaga. Right. And I know Villanova is down right now, but like still, those are three that they could very easily have arguably the most impressive resume in the country, and still, in my opinion, do with a loss.
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
They're legit.
I mean, Gonzaga
really like
had to scrape and fight and claw to get, to win that game.
Drew Timme had to basically take that game over, and this is not Drew Timme propaganda hour, but he literally at one point scored or assisted on 18 straight points for them to win by 1. So that's arguably the best player in the country had to go into whatever Zen mode he had to go into, takeover mode, to win by 1. Now, again, the conditions for both teams weren't ideal, so maybe they play inside and the Zags win by like 8 or 10, but this Michigan State team is legit. They're super deep. They are like the antithesis to Florida State. They have a legit playmaker in AJ. They have a guy in Joey Hauser who's a knockdown shooter. They're getting just enough shooting from guys like Malik Hall and Walker and what's his name? Pierre Brooks. Right. Just enough shooting to keep teams honest. Like, they're not great, but I think as a team, they're shooting over 36%, which is solid. They defend, they're athletic. Sissoko is very quickly growing on me. I mean, the effort that he battled Timme with on that carrier, and the effort in which he battled with Shibwe. Like, this guy's not afraid.
If he doesn't get in foul trouble, I don't think Gonzaga wins that game.
Yeah. No, his effort against arguably the two best bigs in the country has been stellar. And sometimes that's all you need. You just need a guy who's going to look at a Drew Timme, who's going to look at an Oscar Tshiebwe, going to look at a Hunter Dickinson, whoever it is, and be like, I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to go toe-to-toe with you. I'm going to contest everything. Got to be a little bit more disciplined on his end. I mean, Drew Timme is known for fouling out front courts, but still, I would like a little bit more discipline. But that goes a long way. And Hauser shooting 50% from 3 and didn't make a 3 in one game. So that tells you how well he's shooting right now. He was 0% in the Zags game, I believe, from 3, and he's shooting 50% still. So this team's legit. I think maybe the lack of star power could hurt them down the line as games get tighter and they play better and better competition. But this team is very much so in the mix in the Big Ten, very much so. And actually, I honestly think the way they're playing, they might be the favorite as it stands.
Right. Another team we're going to talk about who's on the move, and it's mainly because they're just starting to get fully healthy, and that's undefeated UConn. We've talked about Adama Sanogo, their big center, but they just got back Jordan Hawkins, who's supposed to be. We haven't really seen it yet, but he's touted as a 3-level scorer. He's a sophomore, kind of had a rough year last year, but he's finally healthy now. He's only played in 3 games, about 20 minutes a game, shooting 38% from 3. So we'll see. Some people think that Hawkins, has like first round potential. We don't have him in that range on a draft board yet, but the other piece is, and this is a guy I've always liked, is Andre Jackson. It's like a 6'8" point guard.
Yeah.
The guy is long, athletic, really athletic, and a lockdown defender. The only question is, can he shoot? He's only played in 2. He too is coming off injury. And he's only played 16 minutes a game, so he's only played about a total of 33 minutes. But right now, shooting 50% from the field, 50% from 3. I'm hoping. I haven't seen him play yet. His shot, in previous seasons has been pretty awkward, and kind of ugly looking. But if he can ever straighten out that shot, we're looking at like a more athletic Josh Giddey. maybe not that gifted of a passer,
yeah,
but much better defensively, and athletically. So, and another thing is their transfer Tristan Newton from East Carolina is coming off a triple-double this weekend. So, Connecticut is definitely a team that is going to challenge for the Big East title this year, assuming all those pieces can stay healthy and continue to improve.
I just want to see them. I just want to see them really like play somebody.
And that's coming up.
Yeah, and they do. They're going Oregon, Oklahoma State, and Florida are their next 3 games. So they do have competition on the horizon. Sanogo looks legit. I wasn't really familiar with his game. I haven't seen UConn play a full game, but I just saw he had that 26-point game against Delaware State. So I went back and just started like watching some clips from him. The dude is legit. I just need them. If they can go like if they can win 2 of the next 3 against like Oregon, Oklahoma State, Florida, like I'll give them room to maybe drop a game. But like if they're at Florida, for example, but if they will get to like, what is that? I put them at 7-1. I'd be willing to buy a little bit more stock. I just need to see him play somebody.
Right. I hear you. And another Big East team we're going to talk about, the last team we're going to talk about, is the Villanova Wildcats. We're going to bring on a guest, a Villanova insider, Eugene Repay. Our first guest today is Eugene Repay, a Villanova graduate who's written for the USA Today Network, SB Nation's Big East Coast Bias, City of Basketball Love, and VUHoops.com, which is for Villanova University, among others he's written for. Eugene, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rich, Drew. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you
Absolutely,
in Philly? I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Drew. Are you in Philly or New York?
I'm in New York currently.
What part?
Right now, specifically Westchester County, which is just outside the city, about 20 minutes away.
Yeah, my wife works in the Bronx.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're familiar.
Yeah, yep. I'm both next to the woods. I lived near Philly for quite a while, so yeah. All right. So last week we've been talking about you appearing on the show for 2 weeks. You got bumped because of Ohio State's Zed Key. Ohio State came at us last minute, and we weren't expecting it. So I apologize for that. But you're here now, so let's talk Villanova and some Big East basketball. Like I said, I lived in the Philadelphia area for a long time, Pennsylvania for a long time, so lifelong Nova fan. But this season is starting to give me the same feelings I experienced when Steve Lapis replaced Rolly Massimino in 1992. And Lapis got some good recruits, but never could seem to pull it together. I mean, Rolly always seemed to get the most out of little, and Lapis seemed to kind of do a little bit of the opposite. And so, how concerned are you about Villanova's 2-2 start?
That's an interesting comparison. I don't know how it felt with that transition, but I feel like it's starting to finally see, and now that the season's underway, that it is actually Kyle Neptune's team, and it's no longer Jay Wright. No more GQJ, no more suits on the sidelines. It's a very interesting start so far, because I think if you looked at that Delaware State game and you looked at that Temple game, I would tell you, I don't know how this team is going to look. We're going to go into the Michigan State game and it's going to be a bloodbath. However, that game on Friday gives me hope. I'm still not panicking yet. I really feel like it's only been a month. Kyle Neptune is still missing 2 key players. Players are still adjusting to his system. No panic button yet. So right now, just playing the patient approach.
Okay. All right. Well, you're a much more loyal fan to me. Well, I won't say loyal, but I am very uncomfortable right about now. So yeah. So I'm going to pass you over to Drew for the second question.
I mean, you already kind of touched on it, man. You know, you're missing some key players on the court, and it doesn't help when you're going through a big transition, probably an unexpected one, a head coach. But it's not a surprise that they're struggling without Whitmore and Justin Moore. Any update on their injuries? I mean, I know Moore, it was his Achilles, and that's kind of, the kiss of death, especially in basketball, at least in terms of getting back to where you were pre-injury. Any news on their injuries? What can you expect from Moore when he's healthy? I mean, do you think he's going to have a somewhat easy transition, or this might be a bit of a rough one for him to get back?
So regarding Moore, I think it's probably going to be a rougher transition coming back, just because, like you said, Achilles, kiss of death for any basketball player out there. And especially for the timing of his injury, it came at the very end of the Elite Eight. Most things that I've read say at least 12 months or, around a year. So I just can't really see how he comes back 100%, or especially in a moment where he can really make an impact. I know that early on or over the summer, there were some updates that said that he would potentially be back in January. But right now, the team is kind of keeping him under wraps. Every time you ask for any kind of update, they're like, still TBA, still TBA, he's still rehabbing, which, I don't blame them for taking their time and not really rushing him back. Sorry. Just looking at him, I can't really see how he comes back in January, like they mentioned, and he's able to hit the ground running 100%. It's just such a serious injury. And right now, although there is no official timetable, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up not coming back because they are also keeping his pro aspirations in mind. So, credit Villanova for not rushing him back, letting him take his time. Would love to see him around January, February, because this team can definitely need him. But if he doesn't come back, that'd be totally understandable. And then as for Whitmore, his thumb injury, horrible timing, because everyone was just so excited to see his debut, finally see him, see what the hype was all about. 5-star freshman, McDonald's All-American. Obviously, the mock drafts are still very high on him. He still is raking in awards despite not playing a single minute yet, which is so impressive. That also probably speaks to his credibility as a player. But for Whitmore, right now, it's looking like a mid-December return from what I've been hearing.
Wow. That's longer than I suspected. All right. That's not good news either. So to me, when I'm watching this team compared to the teams that we've seen over the last 10 years or so, they don't really have a point guard that they can count on for 15-plus points and 5-plus assists a game. I don't mean any disrespect to Caleb Daniels, but, this team is not going to go far in March if he's dominating the ball like he has been doing. No one on this team, believe it or not, is averaging better than 2.5 assists per game. Is it time to hand the reins over to 4-star freshman Mark Armstrong?
It's funny, as a Knicks guy, I feel like a lot of problems I've been hearing from the Villanova fan base were things that we've heard for the last 3 years. We need a playmaker. We need a point guard. Finally, the Knicks got Jalen Brunson, and look, it's a night and day. Right now, Chris Arcidiacono, Caleb Daniels, I'm sorry, both of those guys aren't really cutting it as the lead facilitator. I am team play the young guys. I would love to see Mark Armstrong take the reins, take the starting job, or even if it's not the official starting job, give him the bulk of the minutes, give him the crunch time minutes. I think it's time to let the young guns run loose. I would love to see it. To Chris Arch's credit, although he has been shaky, he wasn't too bad in that Michigan State game, but overall the ceiling for the team will be much higher if Mark Armstrong is playing. I don't know how you feel, Rich, but I would love to see the young guns go. I'm definitely in that. I'm definitely with you. And to me, Armstrong is just so much more dynamic than either Daniels or Arcidiacono. I mean, he's fast, and so and obviously they also could use shooting, but and Daniels has been doing this, Jalen Brunson in, imitation of going into the post and backing down. I just, it's just too much of him dribbling and not enough ball movement. And I just don't think they're going to succeed with him dominating the ball. So, yeah, I definitely want to see Mark Armstrong in there. I also think Caleb Daniels is just better off ball. Like, he's just better as a pure two guard.
Yeah, he's never been a point guard.
Yeah.
So currently the team's shooting 34% from three, and while opponents are shooting 39% from three. I know it's a relatively small sample size, and shooting, especially early in the season, is always hard to buy too much stock into. But, I mean, do you see this as one of the team's biggest issues? I mean, we know the three ball has become so prevalent. And, I mean, allowing teams to shoot damn near 40% is pretty much a recipe for disaster, especially as you start getting into conference play, tournament play. What do you think can be done to turn this around? Is this for a personnel adjustment where different guys need to be in different spots? Or do you think maybe it's more of a scheme thing where they just need to kind of change up their defensive looks? Because I just don't think you can survive letting teams shoot that well, especially as the season carries on.
Yeah, defensively, I think that there's something that needs to be tinkered around with the schemes. Just looking at that Michigan State game, Michigan State was not a great three-point shooting team. And it wasn't one of those cases where, wow, they're shooting the lights out. They can run anyone off the court. It was literally guys were left wide open, missed assignments, blown coverages around the perimeter, and then Michigan State, to their credit, cashed in, although they had been a shaky three-point shooting team going into that game. So something needs to be fixed there, whether it's the lineups, whether it's more of the young guns, because I also think that Chris Arcidiacono is a liability on that end of the court defensively. But if we move on to the offensive side, this was actually something I was a little concerned with for the season, just because you knew Colin Gillespie was a sniper. Justin Moore was also one of their better three-point shooters. And with him out, how was this team going to look? Obviously, they've always had the shoot 'em up, sleep in the streets, live and die by the three, that mentality. But just looking at this lineup so far, you could see that they're already struggling. Caleb Daniels leads the team in three-point shooting percentage, but if you look deeper in the numbers, it's really a 6 of 7 shooting percentage. 6 of 7 shooting performance against LaSalle, and then other than that, he hasn't really been cooking from three. Brandon Slater, who was up and down throughout last year, hasn't really found a consistent shooting stroke. No one else on the roster seems to be a lethal sniper right now. I mean, so far, Eric Dixon seems like the kind of guy you can trust. Pick and pop threes, teams are sagging off of him in the perimeter, and I'm surprised by that jump on the three-point line. But right now, no consistent shooting offensively. I don't know how much of that will change when Whitmore and Moore are back, or if it's just a matter of guys are just cold right now because it's still early on. It is a 4-game sample size, like you alluded to, and maybe they'll turn it on late. But from the Temple game to the Michigan State game, it just really seems like the Cats are struggling from.
I think against Delaware State, they opened the game 0 for 18.
Oh, yes. 0 for 17 until Brandon Slater made one. I think it was like at the 17-minute mark of the second half.
Right. Yeah. All right. So talking about another young guy who's actually been with the team for 3 years, redshirted his first year. That's Trey Patterson, forward. He was 4-star guy, highly touted. He's hardly seen the floor since, and you knew with Jay Wright, that's kind of expected. He's not going to, Longino got some playing time last year, but, he rarely plays more than one freshman significant minutes. But now they're struggling. Now I saw Patterson get on the court a little bit against Michigan State, but what's the deal there? What's the issue? Why isn't he playing more?
I've been talking to some of my friends, and I'm starting to get the feeling that he's becoming the 6'9" Brian Antoine, where two highly touted guys out of New Jersey. They had a couple of injury bumps and bruises, although Patterson not as bad as Antoine, to his credit. I just think something's just not clicking for Patterson. You could see it when he's out on there. Sometimes he provides good energy, but overall, defensively, he just seems a little – he's not up to speed, unfortunately. And I think his role in the rotation, deep bench, is kind of indicative that things just aren't clicking, unfortunately, for him.
Okay. All right.
So, your guys' conference is brutal this year. Here at the show, we've talked really highly about Creighton. I know Rich, myself, our buddy Mav, who's usually on the show, have said that there might even be some Final Four upside there. UConn's kind of surprised me and looked really, really sharp. I haven't seen Xavier play yet, but I know Rich was high on them coming into the season. And, kind of surprised St. John's is undefeated. Again, I know it's early, but they still look really good. So, I know it's not the best start to the season for the Wildcats, but how do you think Nova stacks up, and who do you think is going to walk away with the Big East this year?
So I think Nova, by the end of the season, when guys are healthy and back, will be right there in the running. For me personally, I think it's one of those things where you just need to see the king get knocked off first before you can go and hand the crown or say X, Y, and Z are definite front runners, especially just with the way that Nova's been. Even in the years where I thought that they were shaky recently, like, for example, 2019 with Phil Booth and Eric Pascal, and then the drama between Javon Quinterly and other things going on in the locker room. And then they lost to Penn that year, and I'm thinking, no way. Absolutely no way this team is sniffing a regular season or a conference tournament title. And then at the end of the day, they won and three-peated, and it was like the first Big East tournament three-peat ever. And then ever since then, it's, I know it's not Jay Wright coaching the team, and it's Kyle Neptune. But I think when guys are healthy, when guys are back by the end of the year, Nova will still be right in the running. But of those three you listed, Creighton, I am on the Creighton hype train. I actually think that Final Four ceiling is very, very possible, especially with some of the transfers they got in Baylor Shireman. But Creighton is definitely very impressive to me. UConn's front court is loaded. And then Xavier, they surprised me a little bit. I guess Sean Miller has done a great job, but they looked awesome against Indiana. That was a great doubleheader.
Yes, they did. And that was probably the best basketball game I've seen this year so far. So I got two more questions for you. One is when we look over the rest of this roster, not talking about Cam, is there anybody else beside Whitmore, that you think might have that you could see playing in the NBA? Not a star role, but just playing in the NBA.
For this current team, if Justin Moore is able to be healthy and be 100% after the Achilles, obviously that's a very serious injury. But I think that he probably would have made an NBA roster had he not gotten set back by it, and he definitely would have some sort of role somewhere. Maybe not starting, but he definitely would have some sort of role. After him, I would say Eric Dixon is probably the only one, especially if he keeps this trajectory up. I mean, the guy is on fire to start. He's single-handedly carrying the offense, especially as Nova is struggling from the three-point line as a team. He carried the team for the most part against Michigan State and through some of these other early games that haven't looked pretty. Stretch bigs, I don't know. You know, the NBA loves them, and they're starting to be a hot commodity. And I think if Eric Dixon can keep up this trajectory, he can definitely get some sort of NBA look.
Yeah. I mean, his game is definitely progressing. And is it my imagination, or is he slimmed down a little bit?
He looks a little leaner. Yeah, he definitely. I know Shaq Fit did some magical wonders with him last year, but even going into this year, he looks a lot leaner.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into this part of his anatomy too much, but the guy's got a huge butt. Okay, I've never seen but I think that makes him look heavier than he really is. You know what I'm saying? I just think that part of his body is big, but you know, when you look at his chest, he always looked like he was used to be carrying a little bit of a belly, and now he looks pretty slender through the upper body.
Yeah, and the big butt definitely helps with the post-ups, too. Definitely helps with the post-ups.
Yeah, he's
a load down low.
He's a load, yeah. So last question, Phil Knight Invitational, they open up with Iowa State. I think that's a winnable game. I don't know how much you know about Iowa State, but, you know, they're rebuilding. They got some talent, but have you looked into that game much?
Yeah, so I know Iowa State had that crazy turnaround season last year.
Right.
And this year, they should still be formidable. I do agree that it should be a winnable game for Nova, but then also you look at Nova's game so far, I thought Delaware State was going to get chased off the court. That was the 361st team ranked according to KenPom out of 363. So they were the third to last team according to KenPom, and they still gave Nova a scare for a good 32 minutes. Yeah. So I would love to see Nova win at least the first game. I think it is winnable, but hopefully they just build off of that Michigan State game, which was probably their better performance. Yeah, they definitely did show some more ball movement and so forth. Then after that, if they win that, then they have to face North Carolina, who's almost sure to advance against Portland. No, nothing against Portland, but there's no way Portland's beating the number one.
You can have plenty against Portland, Rich. As a WCC alum, trust me, I've seen them play enough times for the last 7 years.
The Pilots.
Right. So Eugene, I really appreciate your time. I hope maybe as the season progresses, maybe when we get around March Madness time, maybe you'll come back and talk to us.
Oh, definitely. Would love to. Hopefully I won't have this cold next time.
All right. That's okay, buddy. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That's great stuff from Eugene. Now we're going to move on to our draft stock report. We'll go through some of these guys. We won't dwell on them too much, but we just want to mention who's hot and who's not. So with the stock rising, first guy we're going to talk about is Tyrese Hunter. This caused my support of Tyrese caused a little bit of a stir on Twitter this past week. Don't look for the tweet because I criticized the writer who said it wasn't a draft prospect, and that led to lots of tears. But Tyrese is a pro prospect, and he's lighting it up, something he didn't do last year at Iowa State when he was considered one of the best defenders in the conference, one of the best playmakers in the conference, and the knock on him was he couldn't shoot. Well, he shut the lights out in the thumping of Gonzaga and is now 40% from deep on the season, shooting 91% from the free throw line. The only thing I'm a little disappointed, but he's not really playing the true point guard because, Texas has 2 or 3 guys that can handle the ball, including Marcus Carr. And so he's not that lead playmaker anymore. So his assist numbers are down. And his turnover numbers, though, they were high last year and they're still pretty high this year. So that's the one thing I want to see change before I move Tyrese in the first round territory.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is shooting 60, 40, 91. Again, it's small sample size. They've only played 3 games. Not to sound like a hater, he was 0 for 4 in the game they played before they played the Zags, and then proceeded to just absolutely torch them where he went 5 for 8. But he looks legit. The defense, I'm buying that. I'm buying that he is a legit, not big, but he's a scrappy defender. And when you're 6 foot, 6'1", you kind of have to be. The playmaking, I see the shades of it. I think Rich is spot on. There's just a lot of ball handling that gets shared around, so he's not getting to dominate the ball. But there's not a lot to not like about Tyrese. I think he's going to cool down. I mean, he's slashing 60, 40, 91. That's absurd, especially at 6 feet. But there's no reason not to at least buy into, like I said, the defense, the playmaking potential. I think this kid's going to average probably 15, 16, 17 a game for this team. He's going to be effective from the field as a whole. And if he can keep that 3-point percentage in the mid, maybe to high 30s, that's a complete player on a really good team.
Yeah, as long as he gets those assists up and turnovers down.
Yeah.
So the next guy is somebody who's been tearing up college basketball for 4 years, or he's going on his 4th year of doing so, and yet never gets any love on the draft boards, and that's Trayce Jackson-Davis. And I'm going to make my case for Jackson-Davis, even though he hasn't made a 3 yet this year. And we said, that's the main thing that's missing from his game. But, the more and more I watch this guy, he's so fit. He's so athletic. He's so quick around the basket. That's why people can't stop him. He just blows right by them. And, the guy is quick off the ground to block shots. And we have seen him make 12, 15 footers. He is a decent foul shooter, an improving foul shooter, shooting 71% from the foul line. And, of course, he's pumping in now 21 points a game, 9 rebounds a game, 1.3 blocks, 2.3 assists, which is nice, and only 8.8 turnovers per game. So I'm just thinking somebody with that body, with that athleticism, with that size is going to find a home in the NBA. Now, if he can shoot, that's going to mean he could potentially be a starter, maybe even a star. If he can't, I still think he's going to find a home because I still think he's going to be useful as a defender, as a rebounder, and as an interior scorer. So, yeah, that's my piece on Trayce Jackson-Davis. And stay tuned, because if he ever does start hitting threes, maybe you're looking at a lottery pick here.
Yeah, you covered everything about him as a player, Rich. The guy is dominating college basketball, has now for years. And sometimes I think, for the sake of what we're doing as well, talking college hoops, sometimes being arguably the best player in college basketball is credit in and of itself. This guy is dominating, has been a force. And I'm looking, they probably are going to end up playing, you could make the argument, and this is going to be a lot of the Big Ten teams, but the hardest schedule in the country this year. Their January through their middle of January through end of the year is absolutely brutal. And this might change. Obviously, it's so early, but you get Illinois twice, Michigan State twice, Maryland, Michigan twice, Purdue twice, and Iowa. All those teams are ranked or kind of on the cusp, right in that wheelhouse. So if come January, February, this guy is still putting up 20-plus points per game, maybe gets up to a double-double in the rebound category, I think he's going to have an extremely strong case for Player of the Year, because as much credit as we give other teams for the Zags scheduling a hard preseason, or, the ACC's historically tough, this dude's schedule is insanely difficult as it stands, and there's a very good chance that it won't matter. He's still going to average 20 and 10.
Right.
I mean, and it's not just the teams they're playing. I mean, there's a stretch where they play 4 games in a row, 5 if you want to throw Michigan in there possibly, against ranked opponents to end the season.
Right.
I don't know another school, another player that might have a schedule like that. So I just want to give him his credit, because for the sake of what we're doing, obviously we're trying to project some NBA future, but the guy's an absolute stud. And I think we need to stop looking at the negatives and just be like, maybe 20 points and 10 rebounds a game on super efficient shooting from a great athlete who competes super hard. Maybe that's enough to give this guy a look. So big fan of Trayce, man. He deserves a lot more credit than he gets.
Right. So the next guy we're going to talk about is somebody who might actually be doing too much for his team, if you ask me. And I think they're going to need better balance, and that's Jalen Wilson. Now, we've talked about Jalen Wilson multiple times on the show. He's tested the draft waters twice last 2 years, always been productive in the games, like at the G League Elite camp, but never tests out great athletically. But to me, I'm watching him this year, and he looks more athletic. His ball handling seems to improve, and he's definitely taken on a huge offensive load where he's almost dominating the ball too much for my taste. But listen to the numbers Jalen Wilson's putting up, and I'm rounding up, of course. 25 points a game. He's 9.3 rebounds a game, 4.3 assists, 0.8 steals, not great, 0.3 blocks, not great, 2.2 turnovers is not great, but when you're averaging 4.3 assists. So, and one of the other knocks beside his lack of elite athleticism has been his shooting, and he's tying a career high right now on 6 attempts per game, but it's only 33%. So I think Jalen Wilson's stock is rising because he does look like a better ball handler. He does look like more of an offensive force, but still the shooting is not quite there.
Yeah, I'm really so I guess the best way to put it is individual stock through the roof rising. I mean, to me right now, the way he's playing, just if you look at his box score, he looks like right around that like end of the first round type of production. I mean, you can't argue the production. He looks like a guy who can go in that 20 to 30 range easily. But as a team standpoint, definitely very concerning. I mean, even against their kind of like warm up, early start the season games, he's still dominating the ball. He had 16 shots in their first game, 17 in their second game. Against Duke, he shot the ball 26 times. I mean, against who did they just play? Southern Utah.
Yeah, which he shot like way, way closer than anyone thought.
He shot 22 times, and the 3-point percentage has actually been pretty sharp. I mean, he had that 0 for 7 outing against Duke, which has killed him. So I think the 3 ball is a little bit better. I don't know how much he's better shooting, but it's all said and done, I think he might be closer to that 35, 36%, because he's at 43% or more in every other game, minus that Duke game where he was awful. So individually, you've got to love what he's doing. I mean, he's almost averaging a 25-point double-double as a 6'8" wing. That like says, damn, this guy is playing out of his mind. His assists are pretty sharp. I mean, the turnovers you don't love, but you kind of have to almost give him a pass because he's dominating so much of the ball, and he's playing such heavy minutes. I mean, you would have assumed in Southern Utah he'd probably play 20 minutes and be able to come out. He played 35 minutes against Southern Utah.
Well, that game was close.
That game was close. But that's what I'm saying. Like you go into that game thinking like, okay, he's gonna play. He'll probably get like 20 minutes. They'll get up by 20, 25, and he's not gonna play the last 8, 9 minutes of the game, maybe even. So individually, his stock is skyrocketing. He's been one of the best players in college basketball. He's going to be on national player radars to start the season.
Well, for sure.
But I worry as a team, this is not it's just not sustainable because you can't have one guy be this so dominant and rely on him so heavily, especially the 3-point shooting, because I'm not convinced he's a great shooter. I think he's a better shooter than he was last year. I definitely see, and what I'm seeing, again, away from that Duke game, is he's worked on his shot. He's more comfortable taking them. He's more comfortable with the ball in his hand, getting his own shot. But the expectation shouldn't be and can't be that this guy's going to need to shoot 30 times for you to win. Yeah. That's just not the type of player he is when they start getting into, Big 12 and conference play and stuff like that.
The problem is they have a point guard who's not really a scorer. Unlike Kansas going back to the 50s, they don't have any big guy to dump the ball down into to get you like 15 a night. So, beside Grady Dick, there's nobody really on this team that you can count on for regular points. So yeah, that's why we were thinking Kansas was overrated.
I still think they are. I know they're at 3, and I know that Duke game is their only game that they've played any kind of competition.
Right.
They have not played. I mean, say what you want, but Michigan State has been brutal. Baylor, UCLA, Illinois, all those guys just played each other. The Zags just played Kentucky, Michigan State, and have, I think, Duke on deck in the next week or so. And I'm looking at Kansas, and they don't really play anybody that I'm really worried until they play Indiana, and that's not until the middle of December. Like they get NC State, Texas Southern.
Aren't they at the one of the field nights?
I'm looking at their schedule right now, and maybe I missed it. And they go NC State, Texas.
Yeah, they're
Southern,
at the Battle of Atlantis. At the Battle of Atlantis.
Okay.
So they will. They definitely will be playing some teams this week.
Okay, that's good to hear. At least in terms of being able to get a better evaluation on them.
Right.
But,
so
yeah.
Moving on is poor man's Franz Wagner out your way, Drew, and that's Drew Peterson of USC. Drew doesn't have a lot of talent around him this year. I mean, USC's not bad, but they're not good either. And I just think before everybody starts talking about Drew, maybe we should mention him because he's been on our draft board for quite a while. Now he's in our top 100, but he's a tall 6'8", 6'9", somewhere in there.
He's like 6'9", I think.
6'9".
6'9", forward, basically.
Point forward, right. And this year, his three-point shooting had steadily progressed to all the way up to 41% last year. That's the only thing he's not doing well this year. He's right now he's at 28%. But as I said, career-wise, he's a 35% guy, and I expect that number to come up. But otherwise, Peterson is averaging 16 points a game, 8 boards a game, 8 assists a game, along with a steal per game, almost a block per game. High turnovers, but again, we're talking about high usage rate. Once again, he's averaging close to 4 turnovers per game. So, but still, with 8 assists per game, he's still got a higher, above 2-to-1 ratio for assist to turnover. So, not ultra athletic, but sneaky athletic. And
just enough. He's just enough athletic. He's just athletic enough to where you got to respect the fact that he's 6'9" and moves well.
Yep.
This guy might actually mess around and win Pac-12 Player of the Year because he, I think last year was a better, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess was a better demonstration of what he could be potentially at the next level when he was playing on a better team. Right. A little bit more of a kind of do everything kind of glue guy.
Well, right, but not be the main guy.
Exactly. Last year he was great too. He averaged 12.5 points, 6 boards, and I think 3 or 4 assists. I mean, obviously. So I think last season's more what you could expect from him if he were to get drafted or play anywhere. But Drew Peterson is taking on a load and again, rising to the challenge. And I love how he's not really he's definitely like the guy, but he's not dominating the offense the way like Jalen Wilson is. Like he's taking like 14 shots a game, which is still a lot, but it's not 26, 27. Now, I haven't really played anybody yet, obviously, so that plays into it. There's going to be a game where he probably has to take 20-plus shots. But I mean, you can't deny the fact he's averaging 16, 8, and 8 and shooting 47% from the field. So I think Drew Peterson is my dark horse as it stands to win Conference Player of the Year.
Right. I couldn't agree more. So if you were watching college basketball highlights, you had to see this guy's dunk. I forget who they were playing this weekend, but Trevon Brazile of Arkansas just it was a mammoth cockback, over his head and posterizing someone. Guy's not even starting for Arkansas because they have all those freshmen. But the thing of it is what's keeping Arkansas afloat right now is not those freshmen. It's guys like Brazile and I'm drawing a blank on his name, the transfer from Wichita State, Ricky Council. Yeah, so it's those guys that are keeping this team afloat. And Nick Smith has yet to play. Also, one of the other star freshmen, Jordan Walsh, came up lame this week. So we're not sure how long he's going to be out. But Brazile is having a nice year, and we know he's athletic. But listen to these numbers. 14. This is all coming off the bench, by the way, but he's playing 31 minutes per game. So it's definitely starters minutes. 14 points a game. And 10 rebounds a game, 1.3 assists, 0.7 steals, 1.3 blocks. Turnovers a little high at 2.7, but shooting splits, 50% from the field, 44% from three on 3 attempts per game, and 80% from the foul line. So I think, and the guy he's only a sophomore. He had a very, very solid year in Missouri. Missouri was a really bad team last year, so nobody heard about him. But he had and he's just taken the next step up. Probably not ready for the draft yet, and he's probably going to be overshadowed by those freshmen. But this is a guy to keep on your radar, and it could be a solid second-round draft prospect down the road.
He's a year away. He's a year away. Because he'll probably get overshadowed by the freshmen. And I think we'll have a better idea of the type of player he is once SEC play starts, because their schedule's pretty light, pretty much up until the middle of January when conference play.
Yeah, they're at Maui. They're at Maui. So they
are? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who's at which tournaments for those listening, so I do apologize if I'm messing up.
And Maui tips, they're playing at Maui right as we speak. Those games are going on. So, we'll get a good look at Arkansas starting today. Okay, hopefully Nick Smith will have made the trip and will play some.
Yeah.
So the next guy we're going to talk about is a guy I'm really familiar with. This plays down the road from where I live, and that's Cliff Omoruyi. Excuse me. Let's get started over. Cliff Omoruyi from Rutgers. He's a junior, a 21-year-old, top 50 recruit, ultra athletic center. And the thing about Cliff is he's been shooting a high percentage and been rebounding, blocking shots, but he's taking that to another level. And he will make some of the most spectacular blocks and rim runs you will ever see. This guy is really athletic. I mean, we're talking about Rutgers guards will throw up some passes. You're like, there's no way he's going to catch it, and he will catch it and flush it. So he's a tremendous rim runner. And so what Cliff's doing this year is averaging close to 18 points a game, bringing down close to 11 rebounds a game, and 2.3 blocks per game. And the thing I also noticed when Cliff, in their loss to Temple, now keep in mind, Rutgers was missing 2 of their 3 best players. So Omoruyi was the only star of Rutgers that played in that game in the loss to Temple. He is now developing an outside shot. He's not hitting them consistently yet, but the shot doesn't look half bad. So career-wise, his numbers are not good. 21% from 3, but 55% from the foul line. Not good, but keep an eye on this guy. If he comes out this year, I still even think, even if he's not shooting at a decent clip, just on defense and rim running alone, he's definitely a second-round candidate. But if he can bring along that offense, who knows? Like I said, this is a 4-star guy that was recruited by some of the best schools in the country, and he just landed at Rutgers.
I haven't seen Rutgers play. I haven't seen Cliff play personally, so I don't have too much. I'll take your word for that one, Rich.
Yeah, I see. Obviously, Rutgers is local, so I see them a lot. So one guy we mentioned earlier, and I won't dwell on him too much, is Armaan Franklin. I mentioned Reese Beekman too. Two of their 3 guards that play along with who's Kie Clark.
Yep.
The lone holdover for Virginia's championship team. But Franklin was a guy who impressed me when he was at Indiana. In his sophomore year, he shot 42% from 3. And last year, he just didn't fit in well with the Cavs, but he really started coming on at the end of the season, and he finished 30% from deep. Well, this year, he's taken it to a new level. And just keep in mind, he just got done playing 2 top 20 teams. He's also expanded his game so that he can score at the basket. So he can take you off the bounce and go all the way to the rim, or his bread and butter. And he can also pull up. So he's not he'll make mid-range shots on you too. But right now, he's averaging 16 points a game, 49% from the field, and 46% from 3, 89% from the foul line. So Armaan Franklin right now has moving up our draft board. Still hasn't broken our top 100, but he's getting close.
Sounds good.
And
well,
definitely got a sweet shot on him. And lastly, last guy we're going to talk about is Nate Laszewski. And Nate is the thing I like about Nate. We interviewed him last year. That wasn't part of the show. That was part of an interview that's on YouTube. But Nate is just taking his game. Every year he's gotten a little better. But this year, he's always been one of the best shooting big men in the country. This year, he's shooting 47% from deep, 58% from the field, 85% from the foul line, also averaging 10.3 boards per game, 1.3 blocks per game, 19 points per game. But the thing that's really impressed me about Nate's game is he's taking people off the dribble. Yeah. If you play him too tight on the outside, he's starting to blow by people. And that's the one thing, people would dare him to drive sometimes, but now he's doing it. If you give him some space and if he thinks he can get by you, he'll do it. And he's looking good doing it. So in fact, I think sometimes he's passing up some threes that he should just take the 3, but, I think he's out to prove a point. I
totally agree.
Yeah, saying we're going to bring on our guest, a teammate of Nate's, Dane Goodwin, right now. Our second guest today is Notre Dame wing Dane Goodwin. Over the past 2 seasons, Dane has finished in the top 5 in the ACC for effective field goal percentage and in the top 10 in the conference for offensive rating. This season, the 22-year-old super senior is averaging 16.5 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 1.8 assists per game, with outstanding shooting splits, shooting 57% from the field, 56% from 3, and 1,000% from the line. Dane, thanks so much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. Any snow on the ground out there?
Way too much. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we had a big snowstorm this weekend, and it's probably a foot or 2 outside right now.
Wow. Yeah, we're so far so no snow here in the New York City area. I'm gonna let Drew start us off with the first question.
Hey man, thank you so much for joining us. I know you guys are obviously season's underway and you're probably busy as all hell. But first question for you is: you're a former Mr. Basketball in Ohio. Your dad was a very successful coach at, I believe it was Capital University in Columbus, if I'm not mistaken. Graduated from Dayton. I know your brother played hoops at Wittenberg, and then your sister played volleyball at Dayton. So, a lot of athletics, a lot of basketball, a lot of sports in the family. With all that said, how did you land at Notre Dame?
So it's kind of funny. I actually grew up a big Notre Dame fan, just kind of from my brother and my dad, kind of had an outside fandom, I guess. So I grew up going to football, basketball games, whatever it was, and would come to campus once or twice a year, make the trip. But ultimately, I committed to Ohio State for a few years and then was planning on going there. But with the coaching change and Thad Matta leaving, kind of reopened and looked around a little bit. And for me, it kind of came full circle. I grew up going to games and then eventually getting to play here and be a part of it. I thought would be really cool. And, I've been happy to be here since.
Absolutely, man.
So your dad, now I don't know if it's still this way, but back in the day, Dayton and Notre Dame used to play basketball like yearly, and they used to be like bitter rivals.
Yeah.
I can remember Jim Paxson playing for Dayton. That's how old I am. I saw Jim Paxson play at Dayton, who is John's older brother.
Yeah, I know the
And,
Paxtons a little bit just because of him. My dad knows Jim pretty well, and everybody there, and it's funny to hear the stories that he has about the Notre Dame games and everything that happened.
Yeah. I can remember one year, like, who the heck is Jim Paxson? And they beat us. It was at Dayton too. So I say us because I'm a lifelong Notre Dame fan. I have more Notre Dame gear than I know what to do with. All right. So moving on. Previously Drew and I were talking about Nate Laszewski's great start, and you are too, as I mentioned, are shooting at a blistering pace. One of the obvious things I'm seeing in Nate's game is he's added the dribble drive. He doesn't hesitate if he's got a driving lane to take his man off the dribble. Where do you think you have made strides this season?
Yeah, I would say more of an all-around game. I think I took a big step in that category last year as well. Just adding little things to my game here and there. But yeah, like you said, Nate's gotten a lot better at that. And, I think I've done a little bit of that as well, whether it's getting to the rim, whether it's my pull-up, post-up game here and there. Just kind of doing whatever it takes. Shots in the ACC are not easy to come by. You get very few open shots, so you got to kind of manufacture it sometimes. And kind of having everything at your disposal is important. So I would say more of just learning how to get shots, whether that's driving, pulling up, taking open shots, whatever it is.
Okay.
So, last March, you guys came really, really close to advancing to that round of 32 in the tournament. And leading to that, Rich and I talked about it. You guys probably had some growing pains, adjusting to newcomers. You guys had Blake Wesley, Paul Atkinson. So, what did you guys learn from that experience, and how is Coach maybe taking a different approach to incorporating new faces? You guys got freshman JJ Starling this season. How are you guys working to incorporate the new guys and then the veterans like yourself as seamlessly as possible? You guys are getting ready to make another run this year.
Yeah, last year was great. It was definitely a learning process. We went through our growing pains here and there. We kind of started out the season pretty slow, to be honest, and one day it just kind of clicked, and we went from there. So I think this year's pretty similar to last year. We have a lot of older guys that know how to play and have been in plenty of experiences, and we're adding new faces into it as well. So just kind of bringing them along with us. Coach has been great. We've had great practices, and obviously a good start to this year. So I think it's a mix of things. Us, the older guys, just having that experience and being in those positions, and just helping the young guys, whether it's through practice, how to take care of your body, little stuff like that. And eventually in those game situations, because we've been in, some tight games already and eventually pulled them out. So there's a lot of different factors that kind of go into it, but just trying to do whatever we can to help the new faces.
Right on.
And your answer leads into my next question. You guys are obviously 4-0, undefeated, but you've yet to play a Power 6 team, and you've had some really close calls. The schedule's about to get tougher. What do you think needs to get cleaned up the most?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you point to is the defensive side of the ball. Just being solid overall, making them make tough shots and going from there. But yeah, we got to kind of buckle down and get better defensively. And we've talked about it. I think everyone knows that. We're gonna rep it out in practice and hopefully get better starting tomorrow. So I would say that side of the ball and eventually that leads into our offense too. So it's going to help us on both sides of the ball.
Right. One thing that I noticed that surprised me when I looked over your team stats was I believe you guys are committing more turnovers than your opponents, and that's pretty unusual under Mike Bray. Has that been talked about at all, or is that just kind of like the new pieces? You got a lot of new guys handling the ball that didn't handle it last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to last year. We're going to have growing pains, and we're going to have to kind of learn on the fly a little bit. And definitely that has been one thing we've talked about, just, sharing the ball like we know how to. And whether that's off a drive, whether that's just reversing it in general, there's a lot of different ways it can come up. But I think it's just a little bit of a growing pain. And I think we'll kind of work our way through it as we go along throughout the year.
Okay.
And I know Rich had mentioned you guys have new faces take on new responsibilities. You guys are trying to incorporate freshmen. One guy we haven't talked about yet, but he should be coming in to help reinforce you guys soon. We hope soon is going to be Marcus Hammond, your guys' transfer. Is there any timeline on his return? How do you guys expect him to fit in?
Yeah, I think he should be back pretty soon. I'd say the next week or two. That's kind of what I've been hearing, which would be great for us. Just adding in another rotation player, and he's a fifth-year senior as well, and he's had plenty of experiences, and he's been great at Niagara. So we're kind of expecting big things from him, and I think he's ready for it. It was good for him to kind of be here in the summer with us and be able to practice and work out and just be around the guys as well. So he's kind of been in the system for a few months now, and he's going to be ready when he comes back, and I think he'll play a big role in what we're doing.
And then, one of the guys, we're talking about you guys' main 6-7 man rotation, but is there anyone else you guys see maybe later as the season comes on stepping up? I mean, I know there's freshman center Dom Campbell. Anybody else that you guys think that maybe as you guys work your way into the season and they get a little bit more comfortable with the system, maybe they'll kind of emerge as a rotation piece too?
Yeah, obviously that's up to coach, but I think Dom Campbell, Matt Zona, those kind of guys are definitely they're aware of the situation, and they know they got to be ready in any given game. Some games we might need them for 20 minutes, some games might need them for 2. Just going to depend, but I think the understand that they have to be ready for any given game because a game might come up where they get thrown in and they got to be ready to go. So right. There's going to be times where they're going to have to play pivotal roles for us, and I think everyone kind of understands that as well.
All right, I'm going to ask you to kind of put on your look into the crystal ball here, but we know that the team is still gelling. Everybody's team is still gelling. What do you think? As we progress through the season, as we get into March, what do you envision this team looking like? What do you think your strengths are going to be, and what are your expectations for the season?
Yeah, I mean, I can see our team being a lot like last year, and ultimately we want to build off of last year, so even better. We came second in the ACC. Ultimately, win the ACC this year would be our goal, and then make it further into the tournament. I really do think that we can be a second weekend team in the tournament, and hopefully even further than that. But we also understand that there's a lot of things that we have to shore up before then. I think as far as our team, I think we create a lot of matchup problems as far as the way we play and just the kind of overall makeup of our team. So taking advantage of those, but also keying in on the areas that we're not, I would say, great at. We're probably not the biggest team in the country. We know that, but we got to play bigger than our size. And on the other side, we got to take advantage of the mismatches that we have. So I would say a lot of what we were last year is kind of what we are this year as well, but ultimately to build off of last year and be a little better and ultimately make it further than we did.
I'm not like an ACC expert, but just off the top of my head, I think you guys can probably spread the court better than any team I can think of in the conference. Mm-hmm. So one vision I have as I've been watching you guys so far this season is JJ, everybody out, 5 out, JJ attacking the rim. He's only averaging a half assist a game, but wouldn't it be, and he's very good at, quick first step, getting into the paint. And I thought, wow, if everybody else was out and if he could start, spreading it around to whoever's open, I thought you guys could be really, really tough to beat. Has there been any talk along those lines?
Yeah, obviously you could tell he's very talented. He can be great for us as well. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things he's going to learn over the course of the year, and he's it's picking up on him quickly already, and you can tell he's athletic and has that kind of first step. So And yeah, that's part of us, the rest of the team as well, just kind of getting him in those positions and being, hey, get to your 2-foot jump stop and look out, or maybe just go to the rim and score. He's going to learn that kind of on the fly, and I think he's going to be a big key for us. And I do think we can take advantage of those mismatches and ultimately have him get to the rim and kick, or get to the rim and finish, whatever it is. But I think he can do a lot of things for our team.
Okay.
So, like, stepping away from school and basketball, I know it's kind of hard right now because I'm sure right now you're getting ready for break, you're finishing up classes, you're in the middle of basketball season. But when you have a moment, Dane, just to kind of step away from everything, what are your interests? What are your hobbies? What do you like to do, away from the court, away from the gym?
I like to do a few different things. I'm pretty close to my family. They're not too far. They're from Columbus, Ohio, so
Nice.
just about 4 hours from here. So I see them a good amount. Like to hang out at the lake house whenever I can with them and get to be with them. Spend a lot of time on the golf course as well. It's kind of my escape. So get out and play whenever I can, and that's kind of my time away from the court. But when I'm in here, I'm in here, and I'm ready to go.
Absolutely, man. Right on.
That warms my heart. That warms my heart. The two best sports in the world are basketball and golf.
I agree with that one.
Was Rex a golfer? He looks like a golfer.
He played a little bit. It's funny. Guys on the team are slowly starting to get into it a little bit more and start to play, and it's kind of cool to see because I've always played on my own a little bit. And now kind of incorporating golf into the locker room is pretty cool to talk about and get guys a little excited for when the warm weather comes back.
Yeah, a lot of people find it annoying and agitating. I find it, like you said, relaxing.
Yep.
What's your handicap?
I'm a plus 0.5.
Oh my goodness, you would kill me.
I played in high school, so that's
there you go.
You're a scratch golfer. Nice. All right, last question, and we'll let you go. I know the story's not over, but up to this point, what has been your most memorable moment at Notre Dame? And it doesn't have to be on the basketball court, just your most memorable moment.
I would say as far as moment, it's probably last year versus Kentucky. I mean, that game and just the whole atmosphere and how it all happened was pretty cool. But I've met some great people at Notre Dame, and I have a great group of friends outside of basketball, and have met plenty of great people as well. So I think just the whole experience, I grew up coming to Notre Dame games and always wanted to come here, and I've been happy to be here for the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been. So it's kind of a culmination of a lot of different things, and been fortunate enough to be in great situations. So, I can't complain on my end.
No, sure. And I think you're right. I think Sweet 16 is a very, very realistic goal, and hopefully even further. Dane, I want to thank you for joining us. We wish you and the Irish the best this season. And after the season, maybe you'll come back and let us know what's up next for you.
Yep, I can do that.
All right, appreciate it.
Right on, man.
And
Thanks,
do me one favor, please tell Nate to return my texts once in a while.
I can do that. Sounds good.
All right, thanks again, Dane. Really appreciate it. All right, that was a great interview with Dane. So now, Drew, this is where you get to fill in the blank. When I wrote the basics of the script for the stock falling section, after the Texas game, we have in here, we don't have a name. We just have Gonzaga Guard to be announced. So, Drew, which Gonzaga Guard do you will put on stock falling? Because all three of them, not counting Strother, because I consider him a wing or a small forward. But out of Malachi Smith, Salas, and who am I forgetting? The little point guard.
Hickman.
All three of them fell on our draft board. They're still in the top 200, but Hickman and Salas are now out of the top 100, and Malachi Smith is right on the edge. He's about to fall out of the top 100 too.
So I'm going to give Malachi Smith a pass, if only because he's new player, new system. You came from a small school in Chattanooga. We were the guy, and now you're on a team where, you're playing behind Timmy, Strother, Bolton. You're just trying to adjust. And so he hasn't been awful, I mean, his assists are way down, which is a little bit surprising, but he's still 55% as a whole from the field. So his offense hasn't been killing them, but it's definitely got to be between Salas and Hickman. I'm going to go Hickman just because he's drawing the starting minutes and he's playing 24 a game compared to Salas at 18. I think with Hickman coming in, the expectation was he was going to take on kind of like a Jalen Suggs kind of role. Now he's not the athlete and like the strength and the explosion of Jalen Suggs.
Little smaller too. Yeah.
Smaller, but was going to take on that like getting the break started, getting out, finishing at the rim, getting others involved, and he just hasn't really shown me much. I mean, at all, to be completely honest. Salas is also disappointing because he was also a 5-star recruit, and he's the sixth man more or less. But
he was actually more highly touted, at least in the collective rankings, than Hickman.
That's right. They're both 5, but there was a small gap. But
yeah.
I mean, and the thing is, like, Hickman hasn't really been great in any game. That's the thing. There hasn't been a game where I was like, okay, I'm really seeing it. He'll make a few plays, which is appreciated. Like, you see the potential. But I mean, any thought of him going to the league, I'm going to assume, unless he somehow turns it on, to some next level, has been dashed. Same thing with Salas. These guys will probably be back next year. And you just kind of look and, he's not really looking for his own shot. I mean, he took 11 against MSU, and was 36%. And every other game, he's been kind of just, it seems like he's just been out there. I guess that's the best way. I can't even really describe it. I'm trying to think because he hasn't been awful to the point where I'm like, oh my God, get him off the court. Some of the other guys we're going to talk about that I think have been like really bad. But his playmaking's not up to par. He's got the turnovers were brutal in MSU and Texas. He had 4 a pop. And it's just for a player like Hickman, who he's going to have the ball in his hands, I'm just worried that if the Zags lose faith in him and say, Bolton's going to be the primary ball handler just because he's a little bit more steady and he's the veteran. Hickman's not a good enough shooter. I just worry that him and Salas need the ball. And if they decide that Bolton or even maybe Malachi gives him a better chance as the primary ball handler, I think these guys could really take a hit to their production. And I think we kind of saw like Bolton against Kentucky really stepped up as the lead guard. He only had 1 assist, but he was much more involved in controlling the tempo, hitting the big shots. I mean, Timmy was looking for him out on the perimeter, whereas, Hickman and Salas kind of took that back seat. And the reality of it is they're going to need them. They're 5-star prospects going into their second year of the system, and they need to be better. So I'm not out on either of them. I think there's plenty of time, and that's the advantage of playing the WCC. In my opinion, is there's going to be plenty of games for them to soak up 35 minutes if they have to and probably blow some teams out and get that confidence up. I mean, I understand that it is hard to take on your starting role and to basically open your season against Michigan, then Texas, then Kentucky. But they've just been so they've just been very meh. Great play. Like, he'll make a great play, whether it's a great read or a good defensive stop, and then come down and just disappear for 3 minutes, and then come back and do something, and you're like, oh, that's great, and then disappear for 3 more minutes. So I think it's between the two of them, but Hickman gets the nod just because he's playing more minutes right now.
Right. Okay. So the next guy is somebody we talked a little bit about earlier in the show, and that's UCLA freshman center Adem Bona. And Bona came in, and we talked about him in the preseason special, and I called him a traditional center. And I wasn't quite sure from what I had seen from him, I wasn't right sure why people were projecting him as a one and done, because to me, he's a traditional center that's really raw. And yeah, he can, he shows a flash here and there of certain things, but he's still just a traditional center. So even during the game last night, they were saying, oh, he's a one and done. And I'm like, and then they said
he was the biggest non-factor. He was the biggest.
He got in foul trouble a lot. He seemed like he fouled every 2 minutes.
But he only had 3 in the game. Like, he didn't even foul out. He still
he only played what? What did he play? Like 17 minutes?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if he was anything other than a traditional center, yeah, maybe. Well, right now, I just don't see why a team would invest a lot into this guy, especially a first-round pick, when he doesn't look that he just doesn't. he's clunky.
You know what this has shades of, Rich? And obviously different position, different player, all that stuff. But I'm already getting shades of a Peyton Watson situation from UCLA. Obviously different positions, different type of skill set. But and it's early, but like Watson was the same thing. There was a few flashes here or there. He'd make a great play. He'd do something that you go, oh man, that's NBA level athleticism or whatever. But I do not see it. And I've only seen Adem play against Baylor, but he was completely a non-factor in a game where Baylor doesn't have a great front court. So this would have been maybe a statement game for him to go out there. I'm not saying he had to go 25 and 15, but maybe he has 10 points, pulls down 8 rebounds, blocks 2 shots, and, plays a good, solid game. You might be able to see it there. But, I mean, you did nothing. He took 3 shots, made 1, and had 3 rebounds. So, and he was just as ineffective against Illinois. So I think similar in the situation of Peyton was constantly being touted as one and done. He's going to make the jump, and the production never matched up. I'm afraid that could be a similar path for Adem, where it's like they're pumping out this one and done narrative, and we're going to see a guy who averages like 5 points and 4 rebounds, and that's about it. I'm not really sold at all. I don't see the mobility. I don't see the offensive skill set. I don't see any sort of shooting ability that gives me any kind of confidence. Like, I don't see anything that makes me go, oh yeah, there's an NBA potential other than that he's 6'10", 240. That's like
right. Yeah, I mean, what I see is somebody who needs to play basketball for a lot more before he thinks about the pros.
At least one more year. At least one more year. At least.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to take you back, take a little journey into the past, and Oral Roberts upsets Ohio State, and the brain trust at ESPN say, wow, this is one of the nation's leading scorers, but we haven't watched him at all, and he just threw up 35 against Ohio State. We're going to take him from nowhere on our draft board and put him at number 30. And then he disappeared after that. But then we're talking about midcourt Max Asmus of Oral Roberts. And Max is somebody we were never that high on. We've never had him really in second round range. But we've always kept an eye on him, and he's always been on our draft board. But he's having a rough year as a senior. And he's shooting right now. I mean, this is a guy who can shoot from any distance, Steph Curry-like distance, and he's great at creating his own shot. Not super athletic, but that doesn't bother him at the conference that Oral Roberts plays in. But this year, they've already played 2 really good teams, and right now he's shooting 29.8% from deep. And listen to these numbers. Against Houston, 1 of 13 from the field, and in St. Mary's, 4 of 11 from the field. So with Max, he's really fun to play, and I hope he turns it around. But you see this problematically in a lot of players, who play at that lower level. They produce against, Texas Southern and Oklahoma Baptist, but they don't, when they play, better teams, they don't. So Max remains, he was going to need, some big games here early on to improve his draft status, and it just didn't happen. So
this is what happens. Like, folks, this is a 6-foot guard who plays at a small school, who's not an elite athlete. This is the general outcome. This is no knock on Max as a player, as a person, but like, you took one great run, and we do it with all sorts of players. We did it with Johnny Juzang when they went on their run. Johnny Juzang's the best scorer in college basketball. He's one of the best. And then the hype of that 5-game run disappears, and he was solid last year. Max is the same thing. He's a 6-foot, 170-pound guard who plays in a very conference. I mean, was the expectation ever that this guy's going to take the NBA by storm? I mean, without being an explosive elite athlete? St. Mary's made him look bad, and Houston made him look worse. He was awful against Houston. Like, actually disgusting. It was horrible. I turned the game off. Like, I don't want to sit there and be so brutal and critical, but he's a great player for the Tux, like Rich said, the Texas Southerns. That's his competition level. Could he maybe catch fire against a good team? And
he did in that tournament last year, in that 1 year, but that was 2 games.
What, 3 games ago?
2 games.
And remember, Kevin O'Banner was also there too. So he had another
Right.
a co-star who could draw attention.
Right. And
now
he's relegated to being a mediocre starter on Texas Tech. And Max would probably be in the same boat if he was at Texas Tech. He'd probably be like maybe Texas Tech's sixth man.
Yeah. So this is what you get when you're a 6 foot, 170-pound guard and you're not an elite athlete and you're trying to play against teams that are chock loaded with tournament and NBA talent. It's just what it is.
All right. The next guys we're going to talk about are two one and dones that are two people. Some people have said are one and dones who seem light years away from being one and dones. We're not saying that these guys won't be in the NBA. We're not even saying they won't be first round picks someday. It just looks like this year is not their year to go into the draft so far. And Seth Trimble, excuse me, was a guy that I actually projected to be North Carolina's sixth man, but he's only playing 13 minutes per game so far. Shooting numbers are pretty good, but he's not doing much else. Zero assists per game for a point guard. So, he's just not getting a lot of playing time, and to me, that probably sends the message that he's just not ready.
His team's trying to win now, so it doesn't really surprise me. Like, again, his games he's literally alternated like 33%, then 100%, and then 33%, and then 50%. Seth's going to have to come back next year, and I can't blame UNC because they are trying to win a title, and we already talked about they have a three-headed guard rotation that's, with Leaky Black and all those guys. It just makes sense that he's not going to get a lot of burn. This team knows what it has on its hands. This coaching staff knows that, like, this is their chance to go win one. And in their heads, maybe they think they should have won it last year. So they're not going to turn the reins over to a freshman. And I don't think that's any knock on Seth. I think that's just it's more of a situational thing than anything with him.
Right. The next guy falls in the same boat. And that's Johan Traore. Traore plays. He's a power forward. Plays for Auburn. Also not getting a lot of run, which is a little bit surprising because, but he hasn't been able to push out incumbent Jalen Williams, not the Jalen Williams from Arkansas, the other Jalen Williams in the SEC, who's a mediocre player, a good college player, but, you thought Traore might get some more run, but he's not. Now, the one thing I will say is this was a top 30 recruit on USA boards, but people in Europe weren't nearly as high on him. Now, I'm probably somewhere in between because the guy does show somewhat of the ability to be a stretch. And so he kind of has more of a game of a forward than a center, even though he has center size. But right now he's only playing about 15 minutes per game, shooting 44% from the field, 20% from three, 33% from the foul line, which has got to improve. And not really doing much else. So again, another guy that maybe one day is going to be a first or second round pick, probably more like a second, if you ask me. But doesn't look like this year he's just not getting the run.
No, I saw him play against Southern Florida briefly, and that was a while ago. That was, I think, like 2 or 3 games ago for them. And he didn't look awful. He just didn't look like he played, I think, like 10 minutes. And he didn't look horrible. And I'm looking at his stats right now, and there's, like, again, from the pure box score, you have to think that there's some potential there. But his free throw shooting's been horrendous. His from the field actually hasn't been too bad. And then he's willing to take threes, but he's only made 2 on what is that? On like 11 attempts on the season, he's made like 2. So again, another guy who's a year away, and that's just kind of what it is.
Right. The next to the last guy we're going to talk about is Henry Coleman. Henry was a former Duke player, top 50 recruit, 4-star guy, had a really efficient year last year with A&M and seemed to be ready to make the next step on a team that went into this weekend, number 24 in the country. Remember, they were the runner. A lot of people thought they should have been in the NCAA tournament. They went to the NIT and just fell short there in the championship. And the thing about Henry is, I mean, Texas A&M looked a mess this weekend in general, but the thing I was disappointed with him is he hasn't improved his efficiency. He still looks heavy. That's been the one knock on him all the time. And he still looks heavy. And, they try to play press defense, and they have him out there with Julian Marble, the transfer from Michigan State, who's also a big boy, who's probably carrying a few extra pounds. You can't press with two chunksters out there, I'm telling you. So Texas A&M's defense is a mess right now. But his efficiency, I'm not going to go through all the numbers. It's just, Henry wasn't on a lot of people's draft boards. It's just one of those guys we had an eye on, thinking he was going to take the next step in. And actually, if anything, looks like he's regressing.
Yeah, I'm not. His numbers are really, really skewed just because he had that horrible game against Murray, followed by an arguably even worse game. No, not arguably, a worse game against Colorado. Like, if you take those two out, he's been decent. He's been probably close to, like, if you're looking at the numbers, he's probably around like 12 points, 7, 8 rebounds. But like I think the worst part is you just expected more, and then it's on top of that how awful they were against Murray and Colorado. So I think this team will right the ship a little bit, as the season goes on. I don't think they're going to be this bad. They did just beat Loyola Chicago somewhat pretty convincingly, at least in terms of what the final score looked like. But yeah, Henry's going to have to really step it up because they haven't played anybody yet, and they've already lost their top 25 billing, and it's only going to get harder from here. So he's going to need to really push towards probably 15 or 16 points a game and probably be in that 8 rebounds a game for these guys to have a chance. And so far, he hasn't really shown the ability to do that. So we'll see.
Yeah. Got to get in shape.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to play him with a team that likes to press. So the one big game we didn't talk about yesterday was Maryland played Miami, and I forget the name of the tournament, but they were playing in the championship game. I thought it was going to be, a knockdown, down to the wire game, and it turned out that Maryland pretty much controlled the game from start to finish. Yeah. One of the things we talked about with Miami that we were concerned about was their lack of size, and boy, did Maryland just take advantage of that. They crushed them on the boards. They constantly scored inside. And Maryland's a good team that we'll probably talk about, maybe next week. But but the thing that disturbed me about Miami is we thought the backcourt of Isaiah Wong and Nigel Pack was going to be explosive. And right now, Nigel Pack is just not fitting in. Wong is dominating the ball, probably not a shocker because, he's the incumbent. Yep. And they're both kind of combo guards, but they're both used to playing with the ball in their hands, and they're both gifted that way. I think Wong, first of all, he's much bigger, but I also think
like 4 or 5 inches easily.
Right, and he's probably the one thing with Wong. I definitely would like to see him shoot a better percentage from 3. But he's so good from the mid-range, so creative around the basket. And so Pack is playing more off the ball. Sometimes he's on the ball. I'm not saying he's not playing with the ball in his hands, but right now he's just not doing it right now. Shooting 36% from the field, 30% from 3. He's only averaging 10 points per game and only 2.6 assists per game. With 1.4 turnovers. So basically the numbers as a whole, just about all of his numbers are pretty much lower than they were last year with Kansas State, but especially his shooting percentages. Now, this was a guy that we weren't super high on because he's tiny, but last year you can't ignore a guy that's shooting, 8 threes a game and making 44% of them. All right. So now we wanted to see, what would he do on a better team? And right now it's just not working out. And so, obviously, any potential draft stock he has is slipping.
I think this team, and they're still, I think 4-1. I mean, granted, their first real test, they did not look good at all. They lost the rebound battle by almost 20, I think, because of the size. I think the best bet you might have here, and it doesn't surprise me that Pack and Wong are struggling to coexist. That tends to be the story when you add a ball dominant guard with a ball dominant guard, and especially when one guard's been in the system and has been there, and the other guy's coming in. It might be kind of weird. I haven't seen Miami play yet this year. I've been more just following them because I was actually really high on this backcourt, or at least I thought they could be really, really good. And I still think they can be. It might be a situation where you have to kind of stagger them. And, you know, maybe they can't share. It's, you know, that you might have to stagger the two of them. And maybe go, I don't know how hard it would be to maybe get one to buy in, one starts, and one comes off the bench where they both end up playing. Because they're both playing right now.
You're not getting Isaiah Wong to come off the bench.
No, I'm saying Isaiah Wong is the guy. Like, Isaiah Wong is the guy. And I'm looking at their minutes per game. One's averaging 34, one's averaging 30, almost 32. So I'm thinking, okay, you're playing roughly the same minutes. If you can get Isaiah Wong's going to run the first team, and one guy's running the second unit, and in spurts, maybe you still have them play together in spurts so they can still try to get used to playing off one another. But it would allow, let's say, Isaiah takes the run, and then Nigel can come in, get into a rhythm, because basketball is a rhythm game, have the ball in his hands, he's making the plays, he's looking for his own shot. Then you can bring Wong back in after Pack's gotten some offense going, he can feel good. If that can't work, then you're in trouble, because if they literally can only exist individually, you have to start asking yourself, well, geez, like, how does that work out when we need our best players on the court? But maybe you stagger them for a bit, let each one get into their own rhythm, and then slowly integrate them that way. Because the reality is this team's going to go as far as those two get them. There's other pieces on the team for sure. Jordan Miller's actually looked pretty sharp for them. I know that I always pronounce, is it Norchad? Norchad Omier?
I think you got it right. Yeah, he's looking pretty good for what.
Yeah, I mean he's giving them a double-double.
I think he even made a 3 yesterday.
Yeah, I mean he's giving them a double-double on 62% from the field. So I mean you have other pieces playing well, but these are the two guys. I mean you brought Pack in to go, hey, we now think we have one of, if not the best starting backcourt in the country. That's the mentality. So you have to find a way to integrate them. But I think maybe right now, while you're still trying to figure things out, you're not playing in conference yet when it's going to get super brutal. Maybe let them kind of figure things out individually, get their individual confidence and games going, and then try to merge them that way instead of saying, hey, you're both out there. You're both used to running the show. Here's one ball. Figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I don't know about you, but we 2 guests today, and we've covered a lot of stuff. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, I think we'll skip the mailbag this week.
Not a problem with me.
All right. So then we'll move on. We'll finish up with our game predictions, which Mav and I were dreadful. Mav was 2 right, 5 wrong. I was 3 and 4. I think that's the reason why Maverick is not with us today, that he's just hiding in shame. Shame. So we're not going to pick specific games. We're going to talk about the big tournaments. There's 5 of them out. I mean, there's a ton of tournaments this holiday weekend,
right now,
but we're going to talk about the biggest ones, starting with Maui, which tipped off this afternoon and is going on right now. So some of these games actually, have already there's probably the results are out there, but I haven't looked at them. So
yeah, I know Arkansas and Louisville are playing like right now.
Right.
Or about to. Yeah.
Right. So we'll start with Maui, and Maui has opens up with Texas Tech versus Creighton, Louisville versus Arkansas, Ohio State versus San Diego State, Cincinnati versus Arizona. And I think this is the way the bracket lays out. So, for example, Drew, I like Arizona to beat Cincinnati. I'm not sure about Ohio State, San Diego State, but Arizona will play the winner of that game.
Okay.
So that's how.
So it's the top 2 matchups from the bottom.
Yeah, matchups. Right. So this lays out how the bracket lays out. So who do you have in Maui?
So I'll just go game. I go Creighton over Texas Tech, Arkansas over Louisville.
You don't have to pick. You don't have to pick.
Just pick an overall winner.
We're just going with the championship. So we're not going to pick each individual game. We're going to pick the champion.
I'm going to say Creighton. I think Creighton has the most firepower. I haven't seen Arizona play yet, so I don't know how they look. And I know Arkansas is a little bit banged up right now. I know we talked about Jordan's out. San Diego State's always tough because of the defense, but I'm just worried that the offense might not be able to keep pace. I'll go Creighton.
Right.
I'll go Creighton.
Okay. Good choice. Good choice. I think the highest ranked team on here is Creighton, but Arkansas is right there too.
Yeah, they're close.
I'm not crazy about Arkansas because I don't know what's going on with Nick Smith, and this will be their first real test. And even if Nick Smith plays, we're talking about a freshman-laden squad. Now, Louisville's terrible. They'll beat Louisville.
Yeah. They'll beat Louisville.
But I don't think they're going to beat whoever wins between Tech and Creighton.
Right.
Ohio State and San Diego State, that's a tough one, but I'm going to go with Arizona here. I'd like them to roll over Cincinnati, and I just think that they have, I just like their path there.
I think Arizona San Diego State might be the most interesting game because, to my knowledge, they're both healthy, and it's kind of opposing ideology. Arizona's always been more offensive oriented, and San Diego State's more defensive oriented. So I would take Creighton and Arizona in the final. Creighton wins. I'll call it that way.
All right. I'm gonna say it's Arizona versus Texas Tech.
Okay.
Right now, I don't think Creighton has totally gelled yet. I don't think we've seen the best Creighton that we're going to see, especially Kaluma. Kaluma hasn't played as well as I thought he would. So.
That's fair. Yeah.
All right. In one of the smaller tournaments, which also starts tonight, it's just a 4-team tournament, but interesting teams, at least to me, living on the East Coast. It's the Empire Classic. It has Syracuse versus Richmond. Tyler Burton, who's been on the show, is Richmond's star, and St. John's versus Temple. And Temple, as we know, can lose to Wagner and then beat Villanova, and then Temple's up and down, crazy.
Yeah.
So who do you like out of this 4-team mix?
So I'm gonna probably go St. John's versus Syracuse. And I'm gonna take St. John's. They've kind of surprised me.
I am going with St. John. I like St. John's as well, and I'm going with the backcourt of Pooh Alexander and Andre Cabello. What a dynamic backcourt! You got to see these guys. They also have DePaul transfer David Jones, who is in our top 200 draft board. Played for DePaul last year. Nobody knows who he is. Watch David Jones. He's a pretty darn good basketball player. Syracuse has some talent too. But I like the Johnnies here. One thing I forgot to tell you about the Maui. Hear me now and listen to me later. His name is Adama Ball. Actually, his full name is Adama Alpha Ball. What a great name. So this guy is a sleeper for Arizona. I think he's going to be a really good I think he's going to be a star in college and maybe a star in the NBA. All right. So now we move on to the Battle of Atlantis. This is a big 18 tournament and loaded with talent. We have Kansas versus NC State, Dayton versus Wisconsin, USC with our Drew Peterson versus BYU, Tennessee versus undefeated Butler. What do you think?
All right, so I'm going to take in the final game, I'm going to go – this is actually a tough one.
Yeah, Dayton could run into Kansas again. Now, remember, 2 years ago –
They did beat them last year.
2 or 3 years ago, Dayton beat Kansas in Maui.
Yeah.
No, they lost in overtime.
They lost in overtime, but they beat them last year.
They beat them last year at Kansas, so they could run into them again.
Okay, so I'm going to go Tennessee, Dayton. Tennessee doesn't look good, though. This is hard. I'm going to go Tennessee, Dayton, and I'm going to say Tennessee rights the ship. We were all high on them to start the season. I think this is their chance to kind of right the ship. And I'm going to say Tennessee beats Dayton, but I'm the Dayton truther on the show, big fan. I'm just not completely sold on Kansas, top to bottom.
Yeah,
and while Dayton's bench isn't great, I did just watch them. They did get their Malachi Smith is back. Yep. And I think he's playing his way back. He didn't look great against. They played, I think it was Robert Morris is who I was watching. But I just think that their starting five is one of the best in the country now that Malachi's back. Yep. So I'm going to go Dayton versus Tennessee. But I think this is Tennessee's chance to right the ship. If for whatever reason they haven't looked great so far, if they continue to struggle in this tournament, and if that's losing to Butler.
If they continue to struggle, our Final Four picks look really bad.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping Tennessee can look at this and go, it's going to be a good game. I mean, I'm thinking they're going to beat Butler. I think they'll play USC, and then they'll get Dayton. But regardless of who they play, this is a solid field. But I'm going to go Dayton versus Tennessee. Tennessee wins it.
I agree with you 100%. But the real reason I like Tennessee is because coming out of Dayton's side of the bracket, it could be Kansas, could be undefeated NC State, could be Wisconsin. It looks pretty good. Anybody could come out of that side, but I can't see anybody but Tennessee coming out of their side. Of the bracket.
Exactly.
So I think
it's going to be Tennessee, USC.
Yeah, the Volunteers got this. They should have it. All right, so now we move on to the Phil Knight tournament, which is broken up into two pieces. First is the Phil Knight Invitational, and we have North Carolina versus Portland, Iowa State versus Villanova, UConn versus Oregon, Alabama versus Michigan State.
So I'm going Michigan State, North Carolina. North Carolina wins it. I think Michigan State, Alabama will be a really good game. I think Michigan State beats them.
Yes.
I think it's gonna be. I think that will be the best game up until the finals when Michigan State, North Carolina meet. Yeah. But I just think Villanova just doesn't look right, and I just don't think they will at any point this season. I think they'll get better, but I don't think they're going to be a super big threat. I've seen Oregon play now. I'm not overly impressed. I think UConn. I think that's gonna be the battle of the bigs. I think that's going to be Dante versus why am I drawing? Is it Sagano?
Now you threw it.
I don't want to pronounce it wrong.
I know but you threw out a wrong pronunciation. You took the word right out of my mouth. Sonogo. So Sonogo
versus Dante, I think will be a pretty cool matchup. But I think this is going to be Michigan State versus North Carolina. I think North Carolina wins. I think Michigan State this year, just as a side note, is going to be the team that they're going to have like a lot of these losses on their resume, but they're going to be so damn good and they're going to make a run in the tournament.
Yeah, their strength of schedule is going to be so high that they'll get into the tournament even if their record is like 18-12. They'll still get in because their strength of schedule is going to be so high.
They have already played Kentucky. They have already played the Zags. They're about to play Alabama, who I think is like 18 or something like that.
And then after that, they either play UConn or Oregon.
And then they play they're likely going to play North Carolina. Right. So I'm going to go North Carolina, Michigan State, North Carolina in this one.
All right. I understand your reasoning. I'm 100%. By the way, Javon Quinterly, we were skeptical whether he could come back from that ACL injury. He played this week. Javon Quinterly is coming off the bench right now, but he's back. So that was a surprise to see him recover so quickly from that ACL injury. But I'm going to throw a little bit different here. I'm going to go with UConn, the team that we talked about earlier that's suddenly getting healthy. But I'll tell you what, Alabama could win that side of the bracket. Michigan State could win it. UConn could win it. And if I had to bet my house on it, I'd go with Michigan State. But I'm going to throw a little curveball in here and say UConn. But I'm going to go with North Carolina to defeat UConn.
All right. No, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think these last two, these Phil Knights, I think are good. Like there's multiple people that can come out and win. There's a lot of talent in these last two. I don't think there's like an obvious winner.
Right. On this side of the bracket, the talent isn't as deep in the Phil Knight legacy section, and that is Duke versus Oregon State, Florida versus Xavier, Purdue versus West Virginia, down years for both of those teams, Portland State versus Gonzaga. What do you got?
I'm going to go Duke, Zags, which was the same matchup I think we got last year, if I'm not mistaken, or a couple years ago.
They didn't have the Phil Knight last year. I think it was 2 years ago.
They played each other in the Maui. That's what it was. The Maui they played each other. I think that might have been last year.
Yeah. But
I think it's going to be a rematch in the Phil Knight. I'm going to go Duke, Zags, and I'm going to take the Zags. I think Duke has some growing up to do. I think individually there's some really nice talent. Kyle Flipkowski really impressed me. Coming off the dribble, he's played strong physical basketball in their loss to Kansas when I watched them play. but I still need to see more from guys like Lively the second.
Yep,
And they're still missing their
no.
best
He
player.
back this week.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Tariq Whitehead.
Tariq Whitehead's back.
Tariq Whitehead is back, so they're 100% now.
Okay, I'm gonna go Duke and Zag. I'm gonna take Duke versus the Zags. I'm gonna take the Zags just because I think Duke still has some growing up and gelling to do. There's a lot of awesome talent on that team, but I think there's still kind of right now individual pieces that need to come together. Whereas the Zags are a team that have all played together, with the exception of Efton Reed, who's probably going to be out of the rotation at this point until further notice, and Malachi, who I think is just now getting his feet under him. But yeah, I'm going to go with Zags, Duke, Zags win.
This one is this is tough.
It is tough.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's tough, because of Zach Edey. Who does Gonzaga have someone can stop Zach Edey?
The question is, does Purdue have someone that can stop Drew Timme, Rich? That's the question.
I'm gonna go with the upset here. I'm gonna say Purdue knocks off Gonzaga. Duke will not have an easy second round matchup because Florida's a solid team and Xavier's even better. Xavier should win that game.
I have Xavier, Duke, and Purdue Zags. That's my second round.
So I'm gonna say Duke gets by Xavier, but not easy, and then they'll beat Purdue because they do have the bodies to match up with Zach Edey. Yeah. So there you go. All right, folks, we no mailbag again, but please do continue to. We only had a couple questions, and they were kind of crap, but please send us really good questions. Actually, we did have one question this week that I do want to address. Someone asked us if we knew who Drew Pember was from UNC Asheville. Yes, we do know who Drew Pember is. He's been on our draft board, not in our top 200, but we've been watching him for 2 years now. We know he went off for 40 points in his opening game. And we have actually, before you sent us that question, we had contacted UNC Asheville to get Drew on the show because we like everyone named Drew, everyone on the show to be named Drew. So we're trying to get Drew Pember on the show. So yes,
let's go. Let's make it 3 Drews. Let's go Drew Pember, Drew Barton, and Drew Peterson. Let's get Drew Peterson on the show.
There you go. All right. So send your questions to admin@hoopsprospects.com. And we appreciate those questions. I'm just sorry we've had a couple of shows now back to back where we either had special 2-part episode or the last 2 weeks we've had 2 guests, and we just don't have the time to get to everything. So I want to thank all of our listeners and our special guest, Dane Goodwin from Notre Dame and Eugene Repay from VUHoops.com. We'll be back next week with another stock report, a special guest, and more. See you soon, folks.
See you, folks.
Happy Thanksgiving week, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a happy Thanksgiving.